The champagne glass shattered against marble before Elena Kim heard the words that would baptize this day in blood. "You actually thought I loved you." Her fiancé, former fiancé, stood 15 feet away in the cathedral's preparation room, his phone pressed to his ear, his back to the door she'd opened without knocking. Cameron Huang. The man she'd built a careful, tender lie around for 18 months. The man laughing into his phone like he'd just won something. "Dude, I'm getting 50 grand for this," Cameron said, his tuxedo stretching across shoulders she'd once traced with her fingertips. "My boys bet me I couldn't get the Ice Queen to fall. Easiest money I've ever made." Hey there, beautiful souls. Welcome back to the channel. Or if you're new here, welcome to stories that'll grip your heart and never let go. I'm so glad you're here with me today. Drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from. New York? Seoul? London? I love connecting with you all across the globe. And hey, if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Hit that button because trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next in this story. Now, back to Elena. The bouquet, white peonies and Korean bellflowers, chosen because her late mother had loved them, slipped from Elena's fingers. It hit the floor with a whisper. Not a sound. Not compared to the roaring in her ears. "She's so easy," Cameron continued, turning slightly, still oblivious to her presence in the doorway. "Desperate, really. I just had to pretend to care about her dead parents and her import businesses." He made air quotes she couldn't see but heard in his voice, and she melted like butter. "God, she even cried when I proposed." 300 guests waited in the cathedral. Her grandmother waited in the front row, the only family she had left, the woman who'd raised her after the accident that took her parents when Elena was 16. Her entire organization waited, scattered among those guests, in designer suits and elegant dresses, playing their roles as normal wedding attendees. 37 of the most dangerous people in the Pacific Northwest, watching their boss pretend to be an ordinary woman in love. Pretending. Elena Kim had spent 10 years building an empire her parents had died protecting. 10 years turning their modest import business into the most sophisticated network on the West Coast. 10 years earning the fear and respect of men twice her age who'd initially laughed at the teenager in her father's chair. She'd eliminated rivals, negotiated treaties, survived 3 assassination attempts. She'd become the ghost in the machine, the Queen of Shadows, some called her, though never to her face. The woman no one saw coming until it was too late. But none of that had prepared her for this. "The wedding's in 10 minutes, the voice on Cameron's phone said, masculine, amused, crackling through the speaker. "You really gonna go through with it?" "Hell no," Cameron laughed. "I'm leaving her at the altar. Maximum humiliation, maximum payout. The guys added another 20 grand if I make her cry in front of everyone." Elena's hand found the door frame. Her engagement ring, 3 carats, princess cut, chosen after he'd casually asked what her dream ring looked like, caught the light streaming through the stained glass windows. She'd told him about her parents one night, 3 months into their relationship. Told him how they died in a car accident when she was 16. How she'd had to grow up overnight. How she'd built their business from the ashes because it was all she had left of them. He'd held her while she cried. He'd kissed her forehead and promised he'd never leave her. He'd made love to her that night with a tenderness that had cracked something open in her chest, something she'd sealed shut the day she'd identified her parents' bodies and learned the truth about who'd killed them. All of it, had been a lie. "She's gonna be so embarrassed," Cameron said. Can you imagine? Elena Kim, the successful businesswoman, more air quotes in his voice, abandoned at the altar. "It'll destroy her." The thing is, Elena Kim had learned a long time ago that the most dangerous weapon wasn't a gun or a blade or even fear. It was information. And Cameron Huang had just handed her the only piece of information that mattered. He had no idea who she really was. Her hand steadied on the doorframe. Her breathing slowed. The shaking stopped. Elena stepped back into the hallway, silent as smoke, and pulled out her phone. She typed 3 words to her second-in-command, Victor Deckard, who was seated 12 rows back disguised as her college friend. "Change of plans." The response came in 5 seconds. "How severe?" Elena looked at her reflection in the hallway mirror, the white Vera Wang gown that had cost more than most people's cars, the hair swept up in an elegant chignon, the makeup that made her look innocent and radiant and utterly, perfectly vulnerable. She looked like a bride. She looked like prey. She typed, "Code black. Cathedral exit. 5 minutes. Bring the files." "Understood, boss." Elena slipped her phone back into the hidden pocket of her gown. Because of course her wedding dress had hidden pockets, she designed it herself, and walked back toward the preparation room. This time, she knocked. "Come in," Cameron called, his voice bright, his phone already pocketed. Elena opened the door wearing the smile she'd perfected over 18 months, the soft, adoring smile of a woman helplessly in love. "Hey, baby," she said, and her voice didn't shake at all. "I just wanted to see you before we..." You know that's bad luck, Cameron interrupted, but he was grinning, pulling her into his arms, kissing her forehead exactly the way he had that night she told him about her parents. His cologne was the same. His touch was the same. The lie was perfect. I know, Elena whispered against his chest. I love you so much. I wanted to tell you that before we walked down that aisle. She felt him tense, just slightly, just for a second, before his arms tightened around her. I love you too, he said. Elena pulled back, looking up at him with eyes that sparkled with what he'd interpret as tears of joy. I'm so lucky, she said. I never thought I'd find someone who understood me, who saw past the business and the walls and just loved me for me. Cameron's smile was perfect. You're stuck with me now. Forever, Elena agreed. She kissed him once, soft, sweet, the kiss of a woman who still believed in fairy tales. Then she stepped back, smoothing her dress. I should go. My grandmother will worry if I'm late. See you at the altar, Cameron said. Elena paused at the door, looking back over her shoulder. Cameron. Yeah. Thank you, she said quietly, for showing me exactly who you are. She watched confusion flicker across his face, just for a second, just a shadow, before she closed the door behind her. In the hallway, Victor waited. 6'3", former military, loyal to her family for 15 years. He held a manila folder that contained everything Elena needed to know about Cameron Huang, his friends, and exactly how much $50,000 would matter when she was done with them. The guests? Elena asked, her voice crisp, the softness evaporating like morning mist. Ready to move on your signal. My grandmother. She suspected something. Asked me 10 minutes ago why you looked too calm. Elena smiled, a different smile now, sharp as a blade. She always could read me. Orders, boss. Elena looked toward the cathedral doors, where 300 people waited for a wedding that would never happen. Where Cameron Huang waited to humiliate her in front of everyone who mattered. Where her enemies, because there were always enemies, scattered among her allies, waited to see her weakened, vulnerable, distracted by love. But what if the prey had teeth? What if the victim was the trap? And what if Cameron Huang had just bet his life on a game he didn't know he was playing? Get the cars ready, Elena said softly. And tell the family. She used the word deliberately, the word that meant something very different in her world, that the wedding is cancelled. Victor's expression didn't change, but his eyes flickered with something that might have been satisfaction. And Cameron Huang. Elena adjusted her veil, checking her reflection one last time in the hallway mirror. She looked like a bride. But brides didn't have the kind of smile that was crossing her face now. Cameron Huang, she said quietly, is about to learn exactly what happens when you make a bet against the house. And in our house, Victor finished, his voice dark with promise, the house always wins. Elena Kim walked toward the cathedral doors, not to get married, not to be humiliated, not to play the role she'd been assigned in someone else's cruel game. She walked toward those doors to show Cameron Huang and everyone watching that the biggest mistake of his life wasn't falling for a bet. It was underestimating the woman he'd bet against. The doors opened. The music swelled. And Elena Kim stepped into the light wearing a wedding dress and a smile that would haunt Cameron Huang for whatever time he had left. But would it be enough time to regret? Or would he realize too late that some women don't break when you shatter their hearts? They simply remind you why everyone else was afraid of them in the first place? The cathedral's main hall stretched before her like a runway. 300 faces turning in unison, gasps of admiration rippling through the crowd as Elena appeared in the doorway. She didn't look at them. Her eyes found her grandmother first. Margaret Volkov sat in the front row, spine straight, silver hair swept into an elegant twist, wearing the same expression she'd worn the day she'd taught 16-year-old Elena how to hold a gun without flinching. Pride, assessment, and something else, a glimmer of knowing that made Elena's chest tighten. Her grandmother had survived the Soviet Union, a loveless arranged marriage, and the brutal politics of the organization she'd helped build alongside Elena's grandfather. She'd buried a husband, a son, and a daughter-in-law. She'd raised a traumatized teenager into the most feared operator on the West Coast. Margaret Volkov didn't cry at weddings, but her eyes were suspiciously bright as she watched Elena pause in the doorway, and Elena knew that her grandmother had sensed something was wrong the moment Elena had walked into the cathedral that morning. You're too calm, Lapochka, Margaret had said earlier, using the Russian endearment she reserved for private moments. A bride should be nervous. You look like you're preparing for war. Maybe I am, Elena had replied, thinking it was a joke. Now, meeting her grandmother's gaze across the cathedral, Elena understood that Margaret had known all along. The old woman's slight nod was permission. Do what you must, my darling. I raised you for this. Elena's eyes shifted to Victor, seated 12 rows back beside his wife, Sophia. They looked like any other couple, him in a charcoal suit, her in a rose-colored dress, their fingers intertwined. Normal. Harmless. Victor had served her father. Had been in the car behind her parents when their accident happened. A coordinated hit by the Bratva's West Coast faction. Revenge for a territorial dispute Elena's father had been trying to resolve peacefully. Victor had pulled their burning car from the ravine. Had tried to save them. Had failed. He'd knelt before 16-year-old Elena 3 days after the funeral and pledged his life to her service. "I couldn't save them," he'd said, his voice raw. "But I will die before I let anyone hurt you." 12 years later, he'd never broken that promise. Sophia, his wife of 8 years, had joined the organization 5 years ago. A former prosecutor who'd gotten too close to the truth about certain import businesses and been given a choice: join or disappear. She'd chosen to join. Now she ran their legal operations, the legitimate businesses that cleaned their money and provided cover for everything else. Elena's eyes found the others scattered throughout the crowd. Daniel Corleone, her financial strategist, seated near the back with his boyfriend. Former Wall Street analyst who'd embezzled $12 million from his firm and needed protection from both the FBI and his former employers. He paid his debt by making Elena's organization financially untouchable. Isabella Ripley, her head of security, disguised as a bridesmaid in an emerald gown. Former CIA operative burned by her own agency when she discovered they were trafficking weapons through channels that intersected with Elena's territory. Isabella had proposed an alliance, her expertise for Elena's protection. 5 years later, she'd saved Elena's life twice. James Wick, her chief enforcer, looking uncomfortable in a suit near the side aisle. Ex-military, ex-mercenary, ex-everything violent until Elena had found him half dead in a warehouse after a job went wrong. She'd saved his life. He'd dedicated what remained of it to her. And there, in the third row, Elena's breath caught. Grace Stark sat with perfect posture, her black hair falling in waves over her shoulders, wearing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Grace. Her best friend since college. Her confidant. The woman who'd held Elena's hand through panic attacks when the pressure of leading the organization became too much. Who'd talk her through doubts and fears and the crushing loneliness of being the person everyone depended on but no one could truly know. Grace was a lawyer at one of Seattle's top firms. Completely legitimate, completely clean. She knew about Elena's import business but not the truth. Not the full truth. She thought Elena ran a successful but slightly shady shipping company. She had no idea her best friend was the woman other criminals whispered about in basements and back rooms. And she was the reason Elena had said yes when Cameron proposed. "You deserve happiness," Grace had told her 6 months ago, over wine and late-night confessions. "You work so hard, Elena. You're always taking care of everyone else. Let someone take care of you for once." Cameron had seemed perfect. Charming. Successful. He ran a tech startup, or so his fabricated background claimed. Attentive without being smothering. Patient with Elena's carefully maintained boundaries. He'd pursued her for 3 months before she'd agreed to a first date. He'd waited 2 months after that before kissing her. Everything had been slow, respectful, perfect. Because it had all been a performance calibrated to trick a woman Grace had described as brilliant but guarded, successful but lonely, strong but desperately wanting someone to see past the armor. Cameron had probably laughed at how easy it was. Grace caught Elena's eye and smiled. Genuine, warm, happy for her friend. Elena smiled back, and the lie tasted like ash. The music swelled as Elena began her walk down the aisle. No father to give her away. Both parents were buried in the Russian Orthodox cemetery on the north side of town, their graves marked with elaborate headstones that said nothing about how they'd actually died. No bridal party flanking her. Isabella was the only bridesmaid, a concession to tradition that Elena had barely managed. Just Elena, alone, walking toward a man who'd bet $70,000 that he could humiliate her. Cameron stood at the altar in his Tom Ford tuxedo, looking like every woman's dream. 6 feet tall, athletic build, dark hair styled perfectly, a smile that had probably practiced in mirrors. He looked nervous. Oscar-worthy, Elena thought coldly. Beside him stood his best man, Ryan Lannister, or so he'd introduced himself. Tech investor, Cameron had claimed. Fraternity brother from college. Elena had run his background the day after Cameron introduced them. Ryan Lannister didn't exist. The social security number was fake. The Stanford degree was fabricated. The investment firm was a shell company with no actual assets. Ryan Lannister was a ghost, and ghosts only existed for 2 reasons in Elena's world: witness protection or professional deception. She'd filed that information away, waiting for it to become relevant. Now, watching Ryan smirk as she approached, thinking she was the fool walking into her own humiliation, Elena understood exactly which category he fell into. The guests rose as she passed, a wave of respect and anticipation. Her enemies were scattered among them too. Thomas Kane, a rival operator who'd been trying to muscle into her territory for 2 years. He sat near the back, his smile predatory, clearly hoping today would weaken her enough for him to make his move. Lisa Kenzo, who ran the Yakuza operations in Portland and had never forgiven Elena for refusing an alliance 3 years ago. She wore red, deliberately inappropriate, deliberately disrespectful. Michael Prospero, the corrupt city councilman who'd been taking Elena's money for 5 years while secretly trying to build a case against her. He sat near the middle, his wife beside him, both playing the role of concerned community members. They were all waiting. Waiting to see the unshakable Elena Kim broken by love. Waiting for weakness they could exploit. Waiting for their moment. Elena reached the altar. Cameron extended his hand, his smile perfect, his eyes bright with what someone who didn't know better might mistake for love. "You look beautiful," he whispered, loud enough for the front rows to hear. "So do you," Elena replied softly. She squeezed his hand, once, gently, and watched his smile widen. He thought he'd won. Father Michael Morrison stood before them, the elderly priest who'd baptized Elena as an infant, who'd presided over her parents' funeral, who'd probably suspected for years that the Kim family business wasn't entirely legal but had chosen faith over questions. "Dearly beloved," he began, his voice warm and familiar. "We are gathered here today." Elena's phone vibrated in her hidden pocket. One buzz. The signal from Victor. "Everything's ready. In the sight of God and these witnesses." Two buzzes. The secondary signal from Isabella. "Exits secured. To join together this man and this woman." Three buzzes. Final confirmation from Daniel. "Financial transfers complete. In holy matrimony." Elena felt Cameron's hand tighten on hers. Father Morrison continued, "Marriage is a sacred bond, not to be entered into lightly, but reverently, deliberately, and in accordance with the purposes for which it was instituted by God." Deliberately, Elena thought. "Oh, Father, you have no idea. If anyone here knows of any reason why these two should not be joined in marriage," Father Morrison said, his voice carrying through the cathedral, "speak now, or forever hold your peace." Silence. 300 people held their breath. Cameron's grip on Elena's hand was starting to hurt. Anticipation, probably, of the moment he'd planned. The moment he'd pull away. The moment he'd humiliate her in front of everyone. Elena smiled at him. Then she let go of his hand and stepped back. "I do," she said clearly. The cathedral erupted in gasps. Cameron's face went white. "Elena." "I know of a reason," Elena continued, her voice carrying with the same authority she used in conference rooms and interrogation chambers. "Several reasons, actually." Father Morrison looked bewildered. "My child." "Father, forgive me," Elena said, turning to the elderly priest with genuine apology in her eyes. "This wedding cannot continue." Cameron reached for her. "Baby, what are you doing? Are you nervous?" "It's okay, it's just cold feet." "It's not cold feet, Cameron." Elena stepped further back, putting distance between them. "It's the bet." She watched the blood drain from his face. Watched his eyes go wide. Watched him realize, too late, always too late, that she knew. "What bet?" he said, but his voice cracked. Ryan, his best man, shifted nervously. The guests were murmuring now, confusion spreading like wildfire. Elena pulled out her phone, not the iPhone Cameron knew about, but the encrypted device she kept in her dress's hidden pocket. "The bet," Elena said clearly, "where your friends wagered you $50,000. She paused, swiping through the phone's contents. "No, I apologize, $70,000, that you couldn't make the Ice Queen fall in love with you and then leave her at the altar in front of everyone she knows." The cathedral went silent. Cameron's mouth opened. Closed. No sound came out. "You," he finally managed. "You're insane. I don't know what you're talking about." "Oh, I have recordings," Elena said pleasantly. She turned to face the crowd. "Would you like to hear them?" "I have Cameron's phone conversation from approximately 20 minutes ago, where he explained to," she glanced at the phone, "someone named Brock that I'm desperate and easy and that he just had to pretend to care about my dead parents." Grace stood up, her face pale with horror. "Elena." But Margaret Volkov remained seated, her expression carved from ice, watching her granddaughter with something that might have been pride. Victor hadn't moved, but his hand had disappeared inside his jacket. Isabella had shifted her weight, ready to move. The family was waiting for her signal. "You recorded me," Cameron said, and there was anger in his voice now, the anger of a man whose con had been exposed. "That's illegal." "So is fraud," Elena interrupted. "So is identity theft. So is conspiracy to commit emotional distress for financial gain." She took a step toward him, and he actually backed away. "But you know what's funny, Cameron." Elena's smile was ice and razors. "I don't even care about the money. I care that you thought I was weak enough to break." "I never said." "You said I cried when you proposed." Elena's voice dropped, became soft, dangerous. "You told your friends I was easy. That pretending to care about my parents made me melt like butter." Cameron looked at Ryan, desperate for support. Ryan had gone pale, his eyes darting toward the exits. Too late, Elena thought. Isabella had those covered. "Here's what's going to happen," Elena said, her voice carrying through the silent cathedral. "You're going to leave. You and your best man and anyone else who was part of this charming scheme. You're going to leave Seattle. And you're never, her voice hardened, ever going to contact me again. Or what? Cameron said, and there was something ugly in his face now, something that had been hiding under the charm. You'll sue me. Good luck proving anything. It's your word against mine. Elena smiled. It was not a nice smile. I don't need to prove anything in court, Cameron. I have something much better than lawyers. She gestured, and Victor stood, 6'3" of barely controlled violence in an expensive suit. Daniel stood too. Then Isabella. Then James. One by one, 37 people rose from their seats throughout the cathedral. 37 members of her organization. 37 people who'd been pretending to be normal wedding guests. 37 weapons aimed directly at Cameron Huang. You see, Elena said softly, as Cameron's face went from angry to terrified, the thing about betting against me is that you never actually knew who you were betting against. She stepped closer, close enough to whisper so only he could hear. My name is Elena Kim. My parents were Alexei and Sun Hee Kim. They ran the largest import operation on the West Coast until they were killed 12 years ago. I inherited their empire when I was 16. For the last decade, I've been the person your criminal bosses whisper about. The Queen of Shadows. The woman you don't cross. The reason people like you, con artists, thieves, and very stupid men, don't survive in my city. She pulled back, watching his face crumble. So here's your choice, Elena said. Leave now, with your life and whatever dignity you have left. Or stay, and I'll show you exactly what happens to people who try to make me look weak in front of my family. Cameron ran. Ryan ran faster. They bolted down the aisle, shoving past guests, tripping over their expensive shoes, fleeing like the cowards they were. The cathedral doors slammed behind them. Silence. Then, Margaret Volkov started clapping. Slow, deliberate applause that echoed through the cathedral like gunshots. Victor joined her. Then Isabella. Then Daniel. One by one, her entire organization stood and applauded their boss, who just turned her wedding into a demonstration of power that every enemy in the room would remember for the rest of their considerably shortened lives. Grace sat frozen, her face white, staring at Elena like she'd never seen her before. Because she hadn't. Not really. Elena turned to Father Morrison, who looked like he might faint. I apologize, Father, she said gently. For deceiving you. For using your church. For. She gestured at the armed members of her organization. All of this. The elderly priest stared at her for a long moment. Then he sighed, removed his ceremonial stole, and set it carefully on the altar. Your mother, he said quietly, would have done exactly the same thing. He walked past her, down the aisle, leaving Elena standing alone at an altar covered in flowers and lies. Margaret Volkov rose and approached, her heels clicking on marble. She cupped Elena's face in her hands that had held weapons, signed death warrants, and raised a child through unimaginable loss. Molodets, she whispered. Well done. Your grandfather would be so proud. Grandma. You showed them who you are, Lapochka. The prey turned predator. The victim became the threat. Margaret smiled, fierce and loving. But the game isn't over. What do you mean? Margaret glanced toward the doors where Cameron had fled. Men like that don't work alone. Someone hired him. Someone wanted you distracted, vulnerable, weakened. Elena's blood ran cold. Of course. This hadn't been about $70,000. This had been about making the Queen of Shadows look foolish. About undermining her authority. About creating an opening for an enemy to strike. Who? Elena asked. That, Margaret said, is what we are going to find out. She turned to address the remaining guests, the enemies, the allies, the confused civilians who'd thought they were attending a normal wedding. There will be no reception, Margaret announced, but there will be champagne in the courtyard for those who wish to celebrate my granddaughter's escape from a very unfortunate marriage. The rest of you, her eyes swept over Thomas Kane, Lisa Kenzo, Michael Prospero, should leave. Now. They left. Only the family remained. And Grace, still seated, still staring at Elena with betrayal and confusion and something that might have been fear. Elena approached her slowly, carefully, like approaching a wounded animal. Grace. Who are you? Grace whispered. Elena knelt beside her friend's pew, her wedding dress pooling around her like spilled milk. I'm still me, she said softly. I'm still your friend who binges reality TV with you and can't cook to save her life and cries at dog adoption commercials. I'm still Elena. But you're also. Grace gestured helplessly at the armed men and women surrounding them. This. Yes. Why didn't you tell me? Because, Elena said quietly, I wanted one thing in my life that was normal. One friend who saw me as just Elena. Not the boss. Not the heir. Not the woman everyone's afraid of. Just me. Grace's eyes filled with tears. I told him you were guarded. I told him you needed someone patient. I told him, oh God, Elena, I help him con you. You didn't know. I should have seen it. I'm a lawyer. I'm supposed to see through people. He fooled me too, Elena said. And I've been trained my entire life to spot liars. Grace looked at her, really looked at her, and Elena saw the moment her friend decided whether to stay or go, whether to accept Elena as she truly was or reject her for the lie. I need time, Grace finally said. I need to process this. I understand. Grace stood, gathering her purse, her movements mechanical. She paused at the aisle. Elena. Yeah. That thing you said. About wanting one normal thing. Grace turned back, and her eyes were sad but not cold. I get that. I really do. But you can't have normal and this. She gestured at the cathedral, the organization, the weapons. You can't have both. She left. Elena knelt alone in her wedding dress at the altar where she should have been married, surrounded by armed guards and deadly colleagues, and felt the weight of her crown settle more heavily on her shoulders. Boss. Victor approached carefully. We found something. What? He held out a manila folder. Cameron's financial records. His broke. The startup was fake. His apartment's rented under someone else's name. Everything about him is a construction. Who built the construction? That's the interesting part. Victor opened the folder. The money for the apartment, the fake company, the clothes, the ring he bought you, all of it traces back to a shell company in the Cayman Islands. Elena stood, her mind already racing ahead. Let me guess. The same shell company that's been trying to buy property in our territory for the last 6 months. The very same. And who owns it? Victor smiled grimly. We are still tracing that. But boss, whoever they are, they just spent almost $2 million trying to humiliate you. $2 million, Elena repeated softly, for a con that sophisticated, for a fake identity that convincing, for a bet that was designed not just to hurt me but to make me look weak in front of my enemies. She turned to look at the remaining members of her organization, the people who'd sworn loyalty to her family, who'd risked their lives for her, who'd just watched her turn a moment of vulnerability into a demonstration of power. This wasn't about a bet, Elena said. This was an assassination attempt. Not on my life, on my reputation. Margaret joined them, her face carved from ice. And it almost worked. But it didn't. Elena straightened her shoulders, feeling the weight of her dress, the weight of her role, the weight of everything she'd inherited when her parents died. Because whoever planned this made one critical mistake. What's that? Victor asked. Elena smiled, the real smile now, the one that had earned her reputation, the one that made enemies wake up screaming. They assumed I'd be broken. They assumed I'd crumble. They assumed the woman in the wedding dress was the truth, and the criminal empire was just her inheritance. She looked at her grandmother. But you taught me better than that, didn't you, Grandma? Margaret's answering smile was sharp as broken glass. I taught you that we don't break. We break others. Then let's find out who tried to break me, Elena said, and show them exactly why that was a fatal mistake. Isabella appeared at her elbow. Boss, we have movement. Cameron and Ryan just got into a black SUV 3 blocks from here. Plates are registered too. Let me guess, Elena interrupted. A shell company. You got it. Follow them. Discreetly. I want to know where they go, who they talk to, and who's paying them. On it. Daniel approached next. Boss, the financial transfers we initiated before the ceremony went through. All $70,000 from Cameron's friends' accounts are now in our charitable foundation. I sent each of them a thank you card for their donation to our organization's youth program. Elena laughed, genuine, surprised laughter that felt wrong in her wedding dress but right in her bones. Perfect. Anything else? One thing. Daniel's expression turned serious. The betting pool? It wasn't just Cameron's friends. There were over 30 people involved. Most of them are small-time criminals, wannabe tough guys. But 3 names on the list are interesting. He showed her his tablet. Elena's smile disappeared. 3 names. 3 of the men who'd been seated in her cathedral. 3 of the enemies who'd come today hoping to see her humiliated. Thomas Kane. Lisa Kenzo. Michael Prospero. They knew, Elena said softly. They knew this was happening, and they came to watch. Not just watch, Margaret corrected. They bet on it. Look at the amounts. Elena looked. $50,000 from Kane, 75,000 from Kenzo. 100,000 from Prospero. They didn't just bet on me being humiliated, Elena said, her voice deadly calm. They paid for it to happen. Which means, Victor said, this wasn't Cameron's idea at all. Someone approached him. Someone hired him. Someone set this entire thing up. And used my friend to make sure he got close to me. Elena's hands clenched into fists. They researched me, studied me, found out about Grace and used her to. Her phone buzzed. Not the encrypted one. Her personal iPhone. A text from an unknown number. Enjoyed the show. Sorry about the dress. But hey, at least now everyone knows what happens when the Queen of Shadows tries to play human. She gets reminded she's a monster. See you soon. A friend. Elena showed the message to Victor. His face went dark. They are taunting you. No, Elena said, reading the message again. They're threatening me. See you soon means this isn't over. This was just the opening move. Then what's the next move? Margaret asked. Elena looked around the cathedral, at the flowers that had cost $30,000, at the altar where she'd almost made the biggest mistake of her life, at the empty pews where 300 people had gathered to witness what should have been her happiness. We find out who hired Cameron Huang, she said. We trace the money. We follow the trail. And we show them that attacking me was just the beginning of their problems. And Cameron? James Wick asked, speaking for the first time, his voice like gravel. Elena thought about the man who'd held her while she cried, who'd kissed her with fake tenderness, who'd made love to her while planning her humiliation. Cameron's a pawn, she said. Pawns are expendable. But I want him to know, I want everyone to know, that pawns who betray me don't get to walk away. She turned to James. Find him. Don't hurt him. Yet. Just. Remind him who he's dealing with. James smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. With pleasure, boss. As her organization mobilized, phones appearing, orders being given, the machinery of her empire grinding into motion, Elena stood alone at the altar in her wedding dress and felt something cold settle in her chest. Something colder than heartbreak. Something sharper than betrayal. Something that felt almost like relief. Because for 18 months, she'd been playing a role. Pretending to be normal. Trying to be the woman Grace thought she was. Someone who deserved love and happiness and a simple life. But that had always been the lie. The truth was standing here in this cathedral, surrounded by armed guards and loyal soldiers, planning revenge and strategy and the systematic destruction of everyone who tried to break her. The truth was that Elena Kim wasn't the woman in the wedding dress. She was the empire in disguise. And Cameron Huang, whoever hired him, and everyone who'd bet against her was about to learn exactly what that meant. But here's the thing about empires. They're built on blood, maintained through fear, and destroyed by the one thing Elena had just allowed herself to feel. Love. And in a world where love was weakness, what happened when a woman who couldn't afford weakness had just had her heart shattered in front of everyone who mattered? Did she become more dangerous? Or did she become vulnerable to the one enemy she'd never prepared for, the part of herself that had wanted the lie to be true? The champagne in the courtyard tasted like victory and ashes. Elena stood among her organization, still wearing her wedding dress, accepting congratulations from people who understood that what they just witnessed wasn't a cancelled wedding. It was a declaration of war. To the boss, Victor raised his glass. Who turns every attack into an opportunity. 37 glasses lifted in unison. Elena drank, feeling the bubbles burn down her throat, wishing it was something stronger. Her phone, the encrypted one, buzzed in her hand. Isabella. Target acquired. Cameron and Ryan heading to Warehouse District. Sector 7. Sector 7. The industrial area near the docks where legitimate shipping businesses blurred into less legitimate operations. Where her family's original warehouses still stood, now fronts for operations that existed in the grey space between legal and lethal. It was also where Thomas Kane had been trying to establish a foothold for the last 6 months. Elena typed back, do not engage. Surveillance only. I want eyes on whoever they're meeting. Isabella. Copy that. Boss. Daniel appeared at her elbow, tablet in hand. You need to see this. He showed her the screen, financial records scrolling past, accounts lighting up in red. The shell company that funded Cameron's operation just moved money. $5 million, transferred to 3 accounts in the last 10 minutes. Let me guess. Kane, Kenzo, and Prospero. Got it in one. Elena's grip tightened on her champagne flute. They're paying out. Which means the humiliation was just phase 1. They accomplished their objective. What objective? Victor asked, joining them. You exposed Cameron. You showed everyone you're not weak. If anything, you came out stronger. That's what we are supposed to think, Margaret said, materializing beside Elena like a silver-haired ghost. But think, Lapochka. What did today really accomplish? Elena's mind raced through the implications. 300 witnesses had just seen her exposed as a crime boss. Her cover as a legitimate businesswoman was blown. Grace, her connection to the normal world, knew the truth. And every enemy in that cathedral had watched her reveal her organization's existence to civilians. They wanted me to show my hand, Elena said slowly. They knew I'd have my people there. They knew I'd react. They wanted me to prove I'm not just a businesswoman. They wanted witnesses. Specifically, Margaret said, they wanted Michael Prospero to witness it. The corrupt city council man. The man who'd been taking Elena's money while secretly trying to build a case against her. He's been looking for proof, Elena said, the pieces falling into place. For years, he's been taking payments but couldn't prove where my money comes from. Today, I just gave him 37 witnesses and a cathedral full of evidence that I run a criminal organization. Daniel's face went pale. Boss, if he moves against you. He won't. Not yet. Elena's mind was already 3 steps ahead. He needs more than witnesses. He needs documentation. Financial records. Evidence that will hold up in court. Today was just confirmation that I'm worth investigating. Her phone buzzed again. Isabella, boss, you need to see this. Sending video now. The video loaded on Elena's encrypted phone. Grainy footage from Isabella's surveillance position. Cameron and Ryan stood in an empty warehouse, facing 3 figures whose faces were obscured by shadows and poor lighting. But Elena didn't need to see their faces to know who they were. The body language. The way they stood. The way Cameron cowered. One figure stepped forward, and even in the grainy footage, Elena recognized him. Dmitry Volkov. Her uncle. Her father's younger brother. The man who'd disappeared 12 years ago, right after her parents' funeral. The man who'd been presumed dead by the family, mourned by Margaret, and erased from the organization's records. Except he wasn't dead. He was standing in a warehouse, paying Cameron Huang for destroying Elena's wedding. The champagne flute shattered in Elena's hand. She didn't notice the blood. NWT, Margaret whispered, her face draining of color as she looked at the video. It can't be. He's dead. We buried him. We buried an empty casket, Elena said, her voice hollow. Because there was never a body. Just a car explosion and DNA evidence that we never questioned because we were too busy grieving. Victor grabbed her bleeding hand, wrapping it quickly in a napkin. Boss, if your uncle is alive. Then he killed my parents. The words came out flat, factual, stripped of emotion because emotion would break her and she couldn't afford to break. He killed them and fake his own death and let a 16-year-old girl inherit an empire he thought should be his. And he's been planning this for 12 years, Margaret said, her voice shaking with rage. 12 years, watching you build what should have been his, waiting for the perfect moment to destroy you. Elena watched the video as Dmitry handed Cameron an envelope. Probably the money he'd been promised, the payoff for a job well done. Then Dmitry looked directly at the camera. He smiled. He'd known Isabella was there. He'd wanted Elena to see this. It's a message, Elena said quietly. He's telling me he's alive. He's telling me he's been watching. He's telling me that everything I've built, everything I've accomplished, everything I am, it's all borrowed time. Her phone buzzed. Another text from the unknown number. Surprise. Family reunions are the best, aren't they? Uncle Dmitry sends his love. And his condolences about the wedding. But don't worry, he's planning something much more memorable for you. Something final. See you at the real ceremony, niece. A family friend. He's going to kill me, Elena said, showing the message to Margaret and Victor. Not just discredit me. Not just take the organization. He's going to kill me the way he killed my parents. Then we move first, Victor said immediately. We know where he is. We have numbers. We end this tonight. No. Margaret's voice was steel. If Dmitry is alive, if he's been planning this for 12 years, then he has resources we don't know about. Allies we haven't identified. Moving against him now would be walking into a trap. Then what do we do? Elena asked, looking at her grandmother, the woman who'd survived the Soviet Union, who'd built an empire with her husband, who'd raised Elena to be strong enough to lead. Margaret's eyes were bright with unshed tears, but her voice didn't waver. We find out how deep this goes. How many of our people are really his people? How much of your organization has been compromised? And then, her smile was terrible. We show my son exactly what happens when you underestimate the women in this family. Elena's phone rang. Not a text this time. An actual call from an unknown number. She answered, putting it on speaker. Hello, Elena. Dmitry's voice was exactly as she remembered. Warm, charming, the voice that used to tell her bedtime stories when she was a child. I hear your wedding didn't go as planned. Such a shame. Uncle Dmitry. Elena kept her voice steady. You're looking well for a dead man. He laughed, genuine, delighted laughter. I've always admired your composure, little one. Even when you were 16, standing over your parents' graves, you didn't cry. Just like your grandmother. Ice in the veins. Did you kill them? Silence. Then, yes. Just like that. No hesitation. No justification. Yes. Margaret's hand found Elena's shoulder, gripping hard enough to bruise. Why? Elena asked. Because your father was weak. He wanted peace. He wanted to negotiate with the Bratva, to share territory, to build something sustainable. Dmitri's voice dripped contempt. He forgot what we are. What this family was built on. We are predators, Elena. We don't share. We consume. So you murdered your own brother. I freed the organization from a leader who would have gotten us all killed with his weakness. And I would have taken his place, built us into something truly powerful. But then, his voice hardened. My mother decided a 16-year-old girl should inherit instead of her son. Her own son, who'd bled for this family, who'd killed for this family, who'd earned the right to lead. So you disappeared, Elena said. Faked your death. Let me take over. Why? Why not just kill me too? Because I wanted to watch you fail. His voice was almost gentle. I wanted to watch you struggle and drown under the weight of an empire you were too young, too soft, too female to run. I wanted my mother to see her mistake, to beg me to come back and save what you destroyed. Except I didn't fail. No. Now there was admiration in his voice. You didn't. You surprised me, niece. You became everything your father couldn't be. Ruthless, strategic, feared. You built an empire that rivals what my father created. For 12 years, I've watched you exceed every expectation. Then why come back now? Elena asked, though she already knew the answer. Because you've become too powerful, too respected, too dangerous. If I wait any longer, I won't be able to take what's mine. So today was your gift, a reminder that no matter how strong you are, you're still just a woman who wanted to be loved, who wanted to be normal, who wanted, he laughed, a wedding. Elena's bleeding hand clenched around the napkin Victor had wrapped it in. Today was also a message to everyone watching, Dmitri continued. To Kane, to Kenzo, to Prospero, to every operator on the West Coast, Elena Kim is vulnerable. Elena Kim can be fooled. Elena Kim has a weakness. And what weakness is that? You still believe in love, in loyalty, in family. His voice dropped to a whisper. And that, sweet niece, is what's going to kill you. The line went dead. Elena stood in the courtyard, surrounded by her organization, wearing a blood-stained wedding dress, and felt the full weight of what she was facing. Her uncle, the man who'd murdered her parents, was alive. He'd spent 12 years planning her destruction. He'd infiltrated her organization, compromised her security, and orchestrated today's humiliation to prove she could be broken. And he was right about one thing. She had wanted the lie to be true. She had wanted Cameron's love to be real. She had wanted, just for a moment, to be normal. Boss. Victor's voice was careful. Orders. Elena looked at the faces surrounding her, people who'd sworn loyalty to her, who'd risked their lives for her, who trusted her to lead them. How many of them were Dmitri's plants? How many were waiting for the right moment to betray her? How many would choose blood over loyalty when it came down to it? We go to ground, Elena said. Full security protocol. No one operates alone. No one makes a move without verification. Trust no one outside this courtyard until we've confirmed their loyalty. What about Cameron? James asked. Elena thought about the man who'd held her, kissed her, made love to her, all while planning her humiliation at her uncle's direction. Let him run, she said. He's already served his purpose. Dmitri got what he wanted. Proof that I'm vulnerable. Killing Cameron now won't change that. And your uncle? Elena looked at Margaret, whose face was carved from ice and fury. We find out who's loyal, Elena said. We root out every plant, every spy, every person who answers to Dmitri instead of me. And then we use them. Feed them false information. Make Dmitri think he's winning. And then? Isabella asked. Elena smiled, the smile that had earned her reputation, the smile that made enemies wake up screaming. And then we show him exactly what happens when you teach a 16-year-old girl to be ruthless, and then expect her to forget those lessons when it's convenient for you. Margaret's hand squeezed her shoulder again. Your father would be proud. My father's dead because he wasn't ruthless enough, Elena said quietly. I won't make that mistake. Her phone buzzed again. Grace's name appeared on the screen. A text. I'm outside. Can we talk? Please. Elena looked toward the courtyard entrance and saw Grace standing there in her elegant dress, looking small and lost and completely out of place among the armed members of Elena's organization. I need to handle this, Elena told Victor. Keep monitoring Dmitri. I want to know every move he makes. She walked toward Grace, aware of every eye watching her, aware that this conversation would determine whether she had anything left of her normal life or if today had burned that bridge completely. Grace's eyes were red from crying. You didn't tell me. I couldn't. 12 years, Elena. We've been friends for 12 years. You couldn't trust me with the truth. I trusted you with everything else, Elena said softly. My fears. My loneliness. My dreams. The only thing I kept from you was the part of my life that could get you killed. And Cameron was sent to destroy me. Using you to get close was just part of the plan. Grace's face crumpled. I helped him hurt you. I told him things about you, private things, vulnerable things, and he used all of it. You didn't know. But I should have. I'm a lawyer. I'm supposed to see through people. And she gestured helplessly. I wanted you to be happy. I wanted my friend to have what she deserved. What I deserve, Elena said quietly, is what I built. This empire. This family. This life where I'm powerful enough that people think twice before hurting me. What I don't deserve is normal. I figured that out today. That's not true. Grace. Elena caught her friend's hands. I love you. You're the sister I never had. But you were right before. I can't have normal and this. I can't be your friend who watches reality TV and your boss who orders people killed. I can't be both. So you're choosing the empire. I'm choosing survival. Because the man who killed my parents is alive, and is coming for me, and I need to be the person who can stop him. Not the person who wants a wedding and a normal life. Tears streamed down Grace's face. I don't want to lose you. You're not losing me. Elena struggled to find the words. I'm showing you who I really am. And you get to decide if you can handle that. Grace looked past Elena at the courtyard full of armed men and women, at the blood on Elena's hand, at the wedding dress that had become a war uniform. I need time, she said finally. I need to figure out if I can be friends with someone who, she stopped, started again. Someone who does what you do. I understand. Grace squeezed her hands once, then let go. She turned and walked away, and Elena watched her disappear into the night, taking with her the last piece of Elena's normal life. When she returned to the courtyard, Victor was waiting with his tablet. Boss, we have a problem. A big one. What now? Prospero just filed paperwork. He's requesting a special investigation into your business operations. He's got support from 3 other council members, 2 federal prosecutors, and, Victor's face was grim, an FBI liaison who's been wanting to take down organized crime in Seattle for the last 5 years. How fast can they move? They're requesting warrants for your financial records, property searches, and witness interviews. If they get a friendly judge, they could have everything approved by tomorrow morning. Elena looked around the courtyard at her organization. People who trusted her, followed her, believed in her. People who were about to be investigated, exposed, possibly arrested. All because she'd exposed herself today. All because Dmitri had planned this perfectly. The wedding had been a distraction. The humiliation had been theater. The real attack was the investigation that would tear apart everything she'd built. Can Daniel protect our records? Elena asked. He's already moving money, burying accounts, creating false trails. But boss, if the FBI gets involved, if they really dig, they'll find something. They always do. Margaret joined them, her face pale but determined. Then we give them something to find. Something that leads away from the real operations. A sacrifice. What kind of sacrifice? Elena asked. A warehouse. Some low-level operations. Maybe a few people who were already planning to retire. Margaret's eyes were hard. We give them a win. Make them think they've heard us. While we regroup and figure out which of our people are really Dmitri's people. It made sense. It was strategic. It was the kind of decision a good leader made. It also meant sacrificing part of her empire, admitting weakness, and letting enemies think they were winning. Do it, Elena said. Set it up. Make it look real. Boss, Victor started. Do it, Elena repeated. Dmitri wants a war. Fine. But wars aren't won by protecting everything. They're won by knowing what to sacrifice and when. Her phone buzzed. Another message from the unknown number. FBI moving faster than expected. Warrants being approved as we speak. By morning, they'll be tearing apart your empire. But don't worry, Uncle Dmitri will make sure you have a cell with a view. A family friend. Elena showed the message to Victor and Margaret. He has someone inside, Victor said. Someone with access to federal investigation details. Someone who knows exactly how fast they're moving. Which means he has more resources than we thought, Margaret said. This isn't just about taking the organization. This is about destroying you completely. Legally. Publicly. Permanently. Then we need to move faster, Elena said. Daniel, I need you to finish burying our records in the next 3 hours. Victor, I need a list of everyone who had access to today's wedding plans. Anyone who could have given Dmitri the information he needed to set this up. Isabella, I need you to find out where Dmitri is really operating from. He's not in that warehouse anymore. He's somewhere with resources, communications, and enough security that he feels safe taunting me. She turned to James. And I need you to find Cameron Huang. I thought we were letting him run. I changed my mind. Elena's voice was ice. Cameron knows things about Dmitri's operation. He knows who hired him, how the plan was structured, what else they're planning. And he's going to tell us everything. Tonight. James smiled grimly. How persuasive should I be? As persuasive as necessary. But James. Elena met his eyes. I want him alive. I want him scared. And I want him to understand exactly what happens to pawns who think they can play against queens. Understood, boss. As her organization scattered to execute her orders, Elena stood alone in the courtyard, still wearing her blood-stained wedding dress, and felt something shift inside her. The woman who'd wanted to get married this morning was gone. The woman who'd believed love was possible was dead. What remained was the Queen of Shadows, the ruler of an empire, the heir to a criminal dynasty, the predator her uncle had trained her to be without realizing that she'd become better at it than he ever was. Dmitri thought today had broken her. He thought exposing her weakness would destroy her. He thought reminding her that she was just a woman who wanted love would make her vulnerable. But he'd forgotten one crucial detail. The woman who wanted love was the disguise. The empire was who she really was. And empires didn't break. They broke others. Elena pulled out her phone and typed a message to the unknown number. To Dmitri, to whoever was helping him, to everyone who thought today had been her defeat. You wanted to remind me who I am? Thank you. I'd almost forgotten. See you soon, uncle. And when I do, you'll remember why father chose me over you. Elena. She hit send. Then she turned to Margaret, who stood watching her with fierce pride. Grandma, Elena said quietly, teach me how to kill a ghost. Margaret smiled, the smile of a woman who'd survived Stalin's purges, KGB interrogations, and 40 years in the American criminal underworld. With pleasure, Lapochka. With pleasure. But here's the thing about killing ghosts. You have to become one yourself. You have to step into the darkness, embrace the monster, and accept that the woman you wanted to be died the moment you learned the truth. And as Elena Kim stood in her wedding dress planning her uncle's death, she couldn't help but wonder, was this who she'd always been? Or was this who Dmitri had forced her to become? And did it even matter anymore? 3 hours later, Elena stood in the basement of her grandmother's estate, watching Cameron Huang bleed. Not much. Just enough to be honest. James had been thorough but controlled, exactly as Elena had ordered. Cameron sat zip-tied to a chair in the center of the concrete room, his tuxedo torn, his face bruised, his eyes wide with the kind of terror that came from realizing you'd made a catastrophic miscalculation. Please, he whispered. I'll tell you anything. Just don't. Don't what? Elena asked, her voice almost gentle. She'd changed out of her wedding dress into black tactical gear, pants, boots, a fitted jacket that concealed the weapon holstered at her hip. Her hair was pulled back in a severe ponytail. The blood had been cleaned from her hand, replaced by neat bandages. She looked like what she was, a predator. Don't kill me, Cameron finished. Elena pulled up a chair, sitting across from him like they were having coffee instead of an interrogation. Cameron, I'm going to ask you questions. You're going to answer them truthfully. If you lie, she gestured to James, who stood in the shadows holding tools Elena didn't want to think about. My associate will know. And then things will get significantly less pleasant. Do you understand? Cameron nodded frantically. Good. First question. When did Dmitri Volkov approach you? 8 months ago. At a bar in Capitol Hill. He said he had a business proposition. 8 months. 2 months before Cameron had accidentally bumped into Elena at Grace's birthday party. What was the proposition? He said there was a woman, you, who needed to be taught a lesson. He said if I could make you fall in love with me and then humiliate you publicly, he'd pay me $70,000. And you said yes immediately. Cameron's face flushed. No. At first I said no. I'm not a monster. But then he showed me pictures of my sister. Elena's expression didn't change, but inside, something shifted. Tell me about your sister. Mia. She's 19. She's at USC, studying music. His voice broke, she's everything good in the world. And Dmitri had pictures of her, walking to class, at her apartment, with her boyfriend. He said if I didn't help him, she'd have an accident. So you agreed to destroy me to save her. I didn't know who you were. I thought you were just some businesswoman. I thought it was just a cruel prank by some rich guy with a grudge. I didn't know about, he gestured at the room, at James, at the empire that had dragged him here, any of this. Elena believed him, which made this more complicated. Did Dmitry tell you what he wanted specifically? Just the wedding humiliation, or was there more? He wanted information about your routine, your security, who you talked to, where you went. He wanted to know everything. And you reported back to him. Every week. Through Ryan, my best man. Ryan's real name is Ryan Volkov. He's Dmitry's son. The room went silent. Victor, monitoring from the corner, swore softly in Russian. Margaret, standing in the doorway, went pale. Dmitry has a son, Elena said slowly. A son we didn't know about. Cameron nodded miserably. Ryan said his father disappeared before he was born. Said he'd been waiting his whole life to meet him. When Dmitry came back, he worshipped him. Would have done anything for him. Including helping destroy me. Ryan hates you. He says you stole his inheritance. That if you hadn't existed, his father would have claimed the organization and Ryan would have been raised as an heir instead of. Cameron stopped. Instead of what? Instead of in foster care. Bouncing between homes. Struggling. Ryan said you lived in luxury while he lived in poverty, and it should have been the other way around. Elena absorbed this information, filing it away with everything else she'd learned tonight. She had a cousin who'd grown up hating her without her even knowing he existed. A cousin who was working with Dmitry to destroy everything she'd built. Family kept getting more complicated. What else did Dmitry tell you? Elena asked. About his plans. About what happens after the wedding. He said the wedding was just the beginning. That he needed you distracted, emotional, off balance. He said once you were vulnerable, the real attack would begin. The FBI investigation. That's part of it. But there's something else. Something bigger. Cameron leaned forward, desperate. I don't know all the details, but I heard Dmitry talking to someone on the phone. About moving product. About a shipment coming in next week that would change everything. He said once that shipment arrived, you wouldn't be able to stop him even if you wanted to. What kind of shipment? I don't know. But whatever it is, it's worth enough that Dmitry paid $2 million just to set up today's distraction. Elena glanced at Victor, who was already typing on his tablet. Boss, Victor said quietly, there's been chatter about a major arms shipment. Russian-made weapons, military grade. The kind of hardware that could start a war. We've been monitoring it, but the source kept moving, the details kept changing. We thought it was a rival operation. It was, Elena said. Dmitry's operation. He's been planning this for 12 years. He had time to build relationships, establish supply lines, create an entire infrastructure we don't even know about. She turned back to Cameron. Where's Dmitry operating from? Where does he live? I don't know. I only met him 3 times, always in different locations. Ryan would pick me up, drive me around for hours to make sure I wasn't followed, then take me to wherever Dmitry wanted to meet. Warehouses, offices, once a penthouse apartment that I'm pretty sure he doesn't actually live in. But Ryan knows where Dmitry is. Ryan lives with him. Somewhere secure. Somewhere with enough protection that Dmitry feels safe. Elena stood, pacing the small room. Every answer led to more questions. Every piece of information revealed how deep this went. Dmitry wasn't just back for revenge. He was back with resources, allies, a son who worshipped him, and a plan sophisticated enough that he'd spent 12 years building it. One more question, Elena said, turning back to Cameron. Did you actually feel anything? When you were with me? Any of it real? Cameron looked at her, really. Looked at her, and she saw something in his eyes that might have been regret. At first, no. You were just a job. A way to save my sister. But then, he stopped, swallowed hard. Then I got to know you. The real you, underneath all the walls. The woman who cried at dog commercials and couldn't cook and worked herself to exhaustion. Because she was terrified of failing the people who depended on her. That woman, his voice broke. I think I actually loved that woman. Which made what I was doing so much worse. But not bad enough to stop. My sister. Your sister was leverage, Elena interrupted. And you chose her over me. I understand that. I might have made the same choice. She leaned close, her voice dropping to a whisper. But here's what you need to understand, Cameron. Your sister's safety was never actually in danger. Because Dmitry needed you cooperative, functional, convincing. Dead sisters don't motivate, they break. He would have kept her safe until you'd served your purpose. And then, she straightened, he would have killed you both. Because pawns who know too much are liabilities. Cameron's face went white. You're lying. Am I? Think about it. You know Dmitry's real identity. You know about Ryan. You know about the shipment. You know too much, Cameron. And men like Dmitri don't leave loose ends. She nodded to James, who produced a phone, Cameron's phone. Confiscated when they'd grab him. Call your sister, Elena said. Check if she's okay. Then give her an address where she can hide. Somewhere safe. Why would you? Because whatever else you did it for family. I understand that. Elena's expression softened, just slightly. And because Dmitri threatening innocent people to get to me is something I won't tolerate. Your sister didn't choose this. She shouldn't pay for your mistakes. Cameron took the phone with shaking hands and dialed. It rang 4 times before a sleepy voice answered. Cameron, do you know what time it is? Mia. Cameron's voice broke with relief. Are you okay? Are you safe? I'm fine. I'm in my apartment. Why wouldn't I be safe? Elena listened as Cameron gave his sister instructions. Pack a bag, go to their aunt's house in Oregon, don't tell anyone where she's going, stay there until he calls again. When he hung up, tears were streaming down his face. Thank you, he whispered. Don't thank me yet, Elena said. You're going to help us find Dmitri. You're going to tell us everything you know about his operation. And you're going to help us stop whatever he's planning. Do that, and maybe, maybe, you and your sister get to walk away from this. And if I can't? If I don't know enough? Elena didn't answer. She didn't need to. The silence was answer enough. She left Cameron with James and Victor, climbing the stairs back to the main level of Margaret's estate. Her grandmother waited in the study, surrounded by old photos and older memories. Dmitri has a son, Margaret said without preamble. How did we not know? Because he hid it from us. Probably from father too. Elena poured herself a vodka from the crystal decanter on Margaret's desk. The question is, who's the mother? And why hide Ryan at all? Protection, maybe. If Dmitri was planning to fake his death, he couldn't leave behind a son who would ask questions. Margaret stared at a photo on her desk. 3 children, maybe 30 years ago. Alexei, Dmitri, and a girl Elena didn't recognize. Or maybe he just didn't want us to have leverage against him. Do you recognize her? Elena pointed to the girl in the photo. Your aunt, Natasha. She died before you were born. Car accident. Another accident. Another family member gone too soon. What if it wasn't an accident? Elena asked. What if Dmitri's been killing family for longer than we thought? Margaret's hand shook as she picked up the photo. My daughter. He killed my daughter. I don't know. But we need to find out. Elena's phone buzzed. Daniel's name appeared. What is it? Boss, the FBI warrants came through. They're hitting 3 of our warehouses at dawn, 4 hours from now. But there's something weird. The warehouses they're targeting are all secondary locations. Low-value operations. Almost like someone told them exactly which ones wouldn't hurt us too badly. Someone did, Elena said. Dmitri. He's controlling both sides of this. He wants the FBI investigation to happen, but he doesn't want it to actually destroy the organization. Not yet. Why not? Because he wants to take it intact. If the FBI dismantles everything, there's nothing left for him to claim. So he's feeding them just enough to make it look like they're winning while keeping the real operations protected. That's brilliant, Elena finished. It's brilliant. He's playing everyone. The FBI thinks they're taking down a criminal empire. We think we are under attack. And meanwhile, Dmitri's positioning himself to swoop in and save the organization from the incompetent girl who let it get raided. What do we do? Let the raids happen. Move anything valuable out of those warehouses tonight, but leave enough evidence that the FBI feels like they accomplished something. And Daniel? Start tracing Dmitri's money. He's funding an entire operation, security, payroll, the weapons shipment Cameron mentioned. That kind of money leaves traces. On it. Elena hung up and found Isabella calling on her other phone. Boss, we found Ryan Volkov. He's at a nightclub downtown, celebrating. Very drunk, very careless. Grab him. Quietly. I want him in the basement within the hour. Copy that. When Isabella disconnected, Margaret was watching Elena with an expression that was equal parts pride and concern. You're moving fast, Lapochka star. Maybe too fast. Dmitri's been planning this for 12 years. I've had 3 hours. Fast is all I have. Fast is also how mistakes get made. Elena set down her vodka, untouched. What would you do if you were me? Margaret was quiet for a long moment. Your grandfather used to say that every war is won before the first shot is fired. The winner is whoever understands the battlefield better. Right now, Dmitri thinks he understands the battlefield. He thinks he knows you, knows your weaknesses, knows how you'll react. But he doesn't. Exactly. Because the Elena he's been watching is the Elena who wanted normal. Who wanted love. Who wanted a wedding and a life outside this empire. That Elena would have been destroyed by today. But that Elena was always a disguise, Elena said softly. Wasn't she? Margaret didn't answer immediately. When she did, her voice was gentle. When your parents died, you were 16. You were smart, tough, resilient, everything I tried to teach you. But you were also just a girl who'd lost everything. And I watched you make a choice that night, standing over their graves. You chose to become what they needed you to be. The heir. The leader. The weapon. I didn't have a choice. Everyone has a choice. Lapochka star. You chose survival. You chose power. You chose this life. And yes, maybe part of you still wanted the fantasy, the wedding, the normal life, the chance to be just Elena instead of the Queen of Shadows. But that was never going to work. Because you can't be both. Cameron said the same thing. So did Grace. Because it's true. And I think you've known it for a long time. You've just been afraid to admit it. Elena looked at her grandmother, this woman who'd survived so much, who'd sacrificed so much, who'd raised her to be a queen in a kingdom of violence and lies. I'm not afraid anymore, Elena said. Today burned out whatever part of me still wanted normal. What's left is what I need to be to survive this. And what's that? Someone Dmitri should never have created. Before Margaret could respond, Elena's phone rang again. Victor. Boss, we have a problem. A massive problem. What now? The weapons shipment Cameron mentioned? We traced it. It's not just weapons. It's military-grade explosives, enough to level half the city. And according to our source, it's not coming next week. Elena's blood ran cold. When? Tomorrow. Midnight. Into port. And boss, the receiving warehouse? It's registered to one of our shell companies. Which means when the FBI inevitably finds out about it, and they will, because Dmitri will make sure they do, it won't trace back to Dmitri. It'll trace back to me. Exactly. You'll be implicated in arms trafficking, terrorism charges, probably treason. Even if you prove your innocence eventually, the organization will be destroyed. And in the chaos, Dmitri takes over. Elena's mind raced through the implications. It's perfect. He frames me for his crime, the organization falls apart, and he emerges as the solution. The prodigal son returned to save the family business from his incompetent niece. Can we intercept the shipment? If we intercept it, we confirm we knew about it, which makes us look guilty. If we don't intercept it, it arrives and we are framed anyway. So we are screwed either way. Maybe. Elena's mind was already working through possibilities, contingencies, desperate gambits. Unless we change the game entirely. Boss. Get everyone to the estate. Everyone we trust. I need to talk to the family. She hung up and turned to Margaret. It's time, Elena said. Time to stop reacting and start attacking. Time to show Dmitri that the student has surpassed the teacher. What are you planning? Elena smiled, the smile that had earned her reputation. Something he won't see coming. Something that will force him out of the shadows. Something that will prove to everyone watching that the Queen of Shadows isn't someone you bet against. She pulled out her phone and typed a message to the unknown number. To Dmitri. ***, you wanted my attention? You have it. Tomorrow night. The port. Your shipment. Be there, or I'll assume you're too scared to face me in person. Elena ***. The response came in seconds. ***, bold. Foolish, but bold. I'll be there, niece. And I'll bring flowers for your grave. Uncle D***. Elena showed the message to Margaret, whose expression was grim. He'll bring an army, Margaret said. Good. So will I. Elena headed for the door. And when the smoke clears, everyone will know who really runs this empire. But here's the thing about chess matches between queens and ghosts. Someone always miscalculates. Someone always underestimates their opponent. Someone always believes they're 3 moves ahead when they're actually walking into checkmate. The question wasn't whether Elena or Dmitri would make the fatal mistake. The question was whether either of them would see it coming before it was too late. And as the clock ticked toward midnight, toward the shipment, toward the confrontation that would determine everything, Elena couldn't shake one terrifying thought. What if Dmitri wanted her to challenge him? What if this entire plan, the wedding, the humiliation, the investigation, the shipment, was designed to force her into exactly the position she was in now? Desperate, cornered, and making the exact moves he'd anticipated all along. Hey, beautiful souls, I know this is intense, right? I'm sitting here writing this and my heart is racing. Drop a comment below and tell me, do you think Elena's walking into a trap, or is she the one setting it? I need to know what you're thinking. And if you're loving this story, smash that subscribe button because part 5 is going to absolutely wreck you emotionally. Trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. 2 hours before dawn, 37 people gathered in Margaret Volkov's study. Every member of Elena's inner circle, every person she trusted with her life, every soldier who'd sworn loyalty to the Kim family. And one of them was Dmitri's spy. Elena stood before them, still in her tactical gear, her hair pulled back, her face stripped of the softness she'd worn for 18 months. She looked at each face, Victor, Isabella, Daniel, James, and the others, searching for the betrayal she knew was there. By now, you've all heard, Elena began, her voice carrying through the silent room. My uncle is alive. He orchestrated today's attack. He's planning to frame me for arms trafficking, destroy the organization, and take what he believes is rightfully his. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Shock, anger, fear. Tomorrow at midnight, a shipment arrives at the port. Military-grade weapons and explosives. Enough to level half the city. The warehouse receiving it is registered to one of our companies, which means when the FBI inevitably discovers it, I'll be the one facing federal charges. More murmurs. Louder now. Dmitri is counting on me being too scared to intercept the shipment. Too careful. Too concerned about looking guilty. He's counting on me playing defense. Elena let the silence stretch. He's wrong. She turned to the tactical map spread across Margaret's desk. Blueprints of the port, shipping schedules, security routes. We are intercepting the shipment. But not to stop it. To redirect it. To turn Dmitri's weapon against him. Victor stepped forward. Boss, if we touch that shipment, we confirm we knew about it. We prove involvement. Only if we are caught, Elena said. And we won't be. Because while everyone's watching the port tomorrow night, we'll already have moved the cargo. Replaced it with something else. Something that will destroy Dmitri instead of me. What are you planning? Isabella asked. Elena smiled. A magic trick. Misdirection. The audience watches the port while the real action happens elsewhere. She pulled up a file on her tablet. Shipping manifests, cargo routes, customs documentation. The shipment arrives by container ship. Customs inspects 1 in every 50 containers. Dmitri's cargo is in container 7734, hidden among legitimate imports. At midnight, dock workers unload it, transport it to our warehouse, and by morning, the FBI discovers it during their investigation. So we intercept it before it reaches the warehouse, Daniel said. No. We intercept it before it reaches the port. The room went silent. Boss, Victor said carefully, the ship is already in international waters. Interdiction requires. I know what it requires, Elena interrupted. Coast Guard clearance, federal authorization, probable cause. Which is why we are not going through official channels. Margaret, who'd been silent until now, spoke from her position by the window. You're planning a hijacking. I'm planning to take what's mine. Dmitri used my company to register that warehouse. As far as international law is concerned, I have every right to inspect cargo shipped to my property. That's not how international law works, Daniel protested. It is when you have friends in maritime enforcement. Elena pulled up another file. Captain Sarah Connor. Coast Guard. She owes me 3 favors for that situation last year with her brother. Victor's eyes widened. The smuggling charges we made disappear. Exactly. Sarah's crew boards the container ship at 2,100 hours tomorrow, standard inspection. They locate container 7734, find discrepancies in the manifest, and seize it. The container never makes it to port. Never makes it to our warehouse. Never becomes evidence against me. And what happens to the cargo? James asked. We examine it. Trace it back to Dmitri's suppliers. Use it as leverage against him. Elena's expression hardened. But more importantly, we send a message. We prove that I'm not the scared girl he thinks I am. That I'm not playing his game anymore. He'll know we intercepted it, Isabella pointed out. The moment his container doesn't arrive, he'll know. Good. I want him to know. I want him off balance. I want him making mistakes. Elena turned to face her organization. These people who trusted her, followed her, believed in her for 10 years. But here's the thing, she said quietly. One of you is working for Dmitri. The room erupted. Shouts of denial. Accusations. Anger. Elena let it wash over her, watching faces, reading reactions. I know it's true, she continued once the noise died down. Because Dmitri has known things only people in this room could know. My schedule. My security protocols. Details about operations that were discussed only here, in private meetings. She walked through the crowd, studying each person. So here's what's going to happen. We are going to proceed with the plan. The Coast Guard intercepts the shipment. We redirect the cargo. And whoever's been feeding information to Dmitry, her voice dropped to a whisper, will report back to him. We'll tell him we are vulnerable. We'll give him the opening he's waiting for. Boss, Victor said carefully, if you know there's a mole, then I'm giving them exactly what Dmitry wants to hear, because the best way to catch a spy is to give them information you want the enemy to have. Understanding dawned across Victor's face. You're using the mole. I'm using everyone. Dmitry wants to play chess? Fine. But he forgot one thing. Elena's smile was razor-sharp. Queens don't just defend. They attack. She dismissed the group, watching them file out, noting who looked relieved, who looked nervous, who looked too calm. When only Margaret, Victor, and Isabella remained, Elena's facade cracked slightly. Did you see? She asked quietly. 3 people avoided eye contact, Isabella said. 4 shifted weight nervously. 2 left immediately without questioning the plan. Marcus Chen, Victor said, naming one of their mid-level operators. He's been with us for 7 years, but his body language was wrong. Too controlled. Sophia Torres, Isabella added. Your logistics coordinator. She's been asking questions about security protocols lately. Said it was for efficiency, but... And Daniel, Margaret said quietly. Elena's blood ran cold. What? Watch the recording. Margaret pulled up security footage on her tablet. When you mentioned the Coast Guard interception, everyone reacted with surprise or concern. Everyone except Daniel. He nodded. Like he already knew. Elena watched the footage, her heart sinking. Daniel. Her financial strategist. The man who'd made her empire untouchable. The man she trusted with every secret account, every hidden asset, every financial vulnerability. It can't be Daniel, Elena whispered. He's been with us for 8 years. He's saved us a dozen times. Or he's been feeding information to Dmitry for 8 years, Victor said grimly. Think about it, boss. Who better to position as a spy than someone with access to everything? Elena thought about Daniel, quiet, brilliant, loyal Daniel, who'd come to them running from his old life, who'd pledged his future to her family, who'd never given her reason to doubt, who'd been perfectly positioned to know everything and report it all to Dmitry. We don't move against him, Elena said finally. Not yet. If he is the mole, we use him. Feed him false information. Make Dmitry think he's winning. And if he's not the mole? Isabella asked. Then we've just saved his life by not accusing him. Elena rubbed her face tiredly. Set up surveillance. I want to know everywhere Daniel goes, everyone he talks to, everything he does. But subtle. If he is working for Dmitry, we can't spook him. Victor nodded and left to make arrangements. When only Margaret remained, Elena finally let the exhaustion show. I don't know who to trust anymore, Grandma. Trust yourself. Trust your instincts. They've kept you alive for 10 years. My instinct said Cameron was genuine. My instinct said Grace would stand by me. My instincts have been wrong about everything lately. Margaret moved closer, taking Elena's hands. Your heart was wrong. Your instincts were screaming at you the whole time. You just didn't want to listen. Because you wanted the lie to be true. And now you're listening. Now you're the leader I raised you to be. Margaret squeezed her hands. Your parents would be so proud. Elena's phone buzzed. Isabella's name. Boss, we have Ryan Volkov. He's in the basement. Very drunk, very angry, and very chatty. I'm coming. In the basement, Ryan Volkov was nothing like his father. Where Dmitry was controlled and charismatic, Ryan was explosive and bitter. Where Dmitry had planned for 12 years, Ryan looked like someone who'd never planned beyond the next drink. He sat slumped in the chair across from Cameron, his expensive suit rumpled, his face flushed with alcohol and rage. About damn time, he slurred when Elena entered. Do you know who I am? Ryan Volkov. My cousin. Dmitry's son. Elena pulled up a chair. The question is, do you know who you are? I'm the heir. The real heir. Not some girl who got lucky because her daddy died. My father was murdered. By yours. Ryan laughed. Bitter. Harsh. Yeah, he told me. Told me the whole story. How Uncle Alexei was weak. How he would have destroyed the organization with his peace bullshit. How Dmitry saved the family by taking him out. And you believed him. Why wouldn't I? Dmitry's a genius. He's been planning this for my entire life. Teaching me, training me, preparing me to take my rightful place. Elena studied her cousin, this angry young man who'd grown up with nothing, who'd been promised everything, who'd been weaponized by a father he barely knew. Your father abandoned you, Elena said quietly. Left you in foster care. Let you suffer while I grew up with privilege. And now he's back, promising you an empire, and you're supposed to be grateful. He had his reasons. He used you. Just like he used Cameron. Just like he's using everyone. You're not his son, Ryan. You're his weapon. And when you're no longer useful, you'll be just another loose end he needs to tie up. You're lying. Am I? Think about it. Your father is a man who murdered his own brother, who faked his death and let a 16-year-old girl shoulder an empire, who orchestrated my humiliation at my own wedding. Does that sound like someone who values family? Or someone who uses people and discards them? Ryan's face twisted with rage and doubt. When this is over, Elena continued, when Dmitry has what he wants, what do you think happens to you? You think he shares power? You think he lets you rule beside him? Or do you think you become a liability, someone who knows too much, who could challenge him, who could take what he spent 12 years building? Shut up. He's going to kill you, Ryan. Just like he killed my parents. Just like he'll kill me if I let him. Because that's what Dmitry does. He destroys family. You don't know him. I know men like him. I've been dealing with them my entire life. Elena leaned forward. But here's the thing, cousin. You don't have to die for him. You don't have to be his weapon. You can choose something different. Like what? Betraying him? Helping you? Like surviving? Like building your own life instead of living in his shadow? Ryan stared at her, his expression cycling through anger, fear, confusion. Why would you help me? I helped destroy your wedding. I humiliated you. Because you're family, Elena said simply. Because we are both victims of Dmitry's ambition. Because I don't want more blood on my hands if I can avoid it. She pulled out her phone and showed him a photo. Ryan as a child, maybe 5 years old, standing beside a woman Elena didn't recognize. Who's that? Ryan whispered. Your mother. Her name was Irina Volkov. She was married to Dmitry before he faked his death. She died 6 months after he disappeared, officially a suicide, but the investigating officer noted suspicious bruising. Ryan's face went white. My mother was probably murdered by your father, to eliminate evidence of your existence, to tie up loose ends. Elena's voice was gentle but firm. That's who Dmitry is, Ryan. That's what he does to family. No, he wouldn't. He would. He did. And he'll do it to you too if you give him reason. She let that sink in, watching her cousin's worldview shatter in real time. I'll give you a choice, Elena said. Work with me. Tell me everything you know about Dmitry's operation. Help me stop him. And in exchange, I'll make sure you survive this. I'll give you money to start over. A new identity if you need it. A chance at the life Dmitry stole from you. And if I refuse, then you go down with him. Because I'm taking Dmitry down, Ryan. With or without your help. The only question is whether you're smart enough to save yourself. Ryan looked at Cameron, who'd been silent through the entire exchange. He's telling the truth, Cameron said quietly. About how Dmitry uses people. I thought I was saving my sister. Turns out I was just a tool. Just like you. Ryan's shoulders slumped. What do you want to know? Everything. Starting with where Dmitry is operating from. Over the next hour, Ryan talked. He told them about the compound, a fortified estate in the mountains, 2 hours north of Seattle. Old money, hidden ownership, security that rivaled military installations. He told them about Dmitry's network, connections to Russian Bratva, Chinese triads, Mexican cartels. Alliances built over 12 years of patience and planning. He told them about the shipment, not just weapons, but leverage. Evidence of corruption involving 6 federal prosecutors, 3 senators, and a Supreme Court justice. Insurance against anyone trying to stop Dmitry once he made his move. And he told them about the plan. The shipment arrives tomorrow at midnight, Ryan said. Dmitry's counting on you intercepting it. He wants you to. Because while you're focused on the port, he's hitting your real assets. Your legitimate businesses. Your clean operations. By morning, everything you've built, every company, every account, every property, will be transferred to shell corporations he controls. Elena felt the blood drain from her face. That's impossible. The financial transfers alone would take weeks. Not if you have someone on the inside. Someone with access to everything. Ryan looked at her meaningfully. Someone like Daniel Corleone. There it was. Confirmation. Daniel had been Dmitry's spy all along. How long? Elena asked quietly. Since the beginning. Since before you even hired him. Dmitry planted him 8 years ago, gave him a convincing backstory, and waited for you to trust him with everything. Elena thought about Daniel. 8 years of loyalty, of brilliance, of saving her empire from financial disaster after financial disaster. All of it a lie. All of it preparation for this moment. The transfers are already in motion, Ryan continued. Daniel initiated them tonight, set them to execute at midnight tomorrow. By the time you realize what's happening, it'll be too late to stop it. Can we reverse them? Victor asked. Not without Daniel's access codes. And good luck getting those from him. Ryan laughed bitterly. Dmitri thought of everything. Elena's mind raced through possibilities, contingencies, desperate options. If Daniel had access to everything, then everything was compromised. The organization she'd built for 10 years, the empire her parents had died for, the legacy she'd sworn to protect, all of it was about to be stolen from her by the man she'd trusted most. There has to be a way, she said. There isn't, Ryan said flatly. I'm sorry, cousin. Dmitri's been planning this since before you could vote. You're smart, you're tough, you're everything he says you are. But you can't beat 12 years of preparation in one night. Elena stood, pacing the small room, her mind working through scenario after scenario. Every solution led to a dead end. Every plan required resources she didn't have or time she didn't control. Dmitri had won. He'd orchestrated today's humiliation, planted a spy in her organization, compromised her finances, and set up a trap she couldn't escape. He'd turned her empire into a timer counting down to midnight, when everything would become his. And there was nothing she could do to stop it. Boss. Victor's voice was careful. Orders. Elena looked at him, at Isabella, at James, at all the people who trusted her to lead them, to protect them, to be worthy of their loyalty. She couldn't let them down. She couldn't let Dmitri win. There had to be a way. Call everyone back, Elena said suddenly. Everyone we trust. Everyone who's not Daniel. I need them here in 30 minutes. Boss, what are you thinking? If Dmitri's been planning this for 12 years, then he's thought of everything. Every obvious solution, every standard response, every move I might make. Elena's eyes gleamed with something dangerous. So we do something he won't expect. Something crazy. Something that only works if we are willing to risk everything. What's that? Margaret asked. Elena smiled, the smile that had earned her reputation, the smile that made enemies wake up screaming. We don't save the empire, she said quietly. We destroy it ourselves. The room went silent. Boss, Victor said carefully, I'm not sure I understand. Dmitri wants my empire. He wants the organization my parents built, the networks I've cultivated, the power I've accumulated. He spent 12 years positioning himself to take it. Elena's voice grew stronger. So we take away what he wants. We dismantle everything. Liquidate assets. Burn the bridges. Salt the earth. By the time midnight arrives, there won't be an empire left for him to steal. That's insane, Isabella said. That's destroying everything we've built. To save it from him. Yes. Elena turned to Margaret. Grandma, you understand. Tell them. Margaret was quiet for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she smiled, the same terrible smile Elena had inherited. Scorched earth, Margaret said softly. If we can't have it, no one can. Your grandfather did the same thing once, when the old Bratva tried to take St. Petersburg from him. He destroyed his own operation rather than let them have it. 3 months later, he rebuilt stronger than ever. Because he still had the most important thing. What's that? Ryan asked. Loyalty, Elena said. People. The ones who followed him because they believed in him, not because of what he owned. Dmitri can steal companies and accounts and properties, but he can't steal loyalty. And that's what we rebuild from. She pulled up her tablet, fingers flying across the screen. Daniel has access to everything. Fine. We use that. We initiate our own transfers, move every dollar, every asset, every piece of the empire into accounts he can't touch. Personal accounts, international holdings, cryptocurrency. We liquidate the shell corporations, dissolve the partnerships, terminate the contracts. By midnight, the empire Daniel thinks is stealing will be an empty shell. And then? Victor asked. And then we rebuild. Different structure, different companies, different names. Everything clean, everything legitimate. We go dark for 6 months, maybe a year. Let Dmitri think he won. Let him celebrate his victory. And while he's distracted. We build something he can't take, Isabella finished, understanding dawning. Something better. Exactly. Boss, James said slowly, this plan requires us trusting each other completely. If anyone talks, if anyone gives Dmitri warning, the whole thing falls apart. I know. Elena looked at each person in the room, which is why I'm only telling people I'd bet my life on. The core family. The people who've bled with me, suffered with me, survived with me. Everyone else gets partial information. Enough to do their jobs but not enough to compromise the plan. What about Daniel? Victor asked. He'll notice the transfers. Let him notice. Let him report to Dmitri. By the time they realize what we are doing, it'll be too late to stop it. Elena turned to Ryan. You said Dmitry has evidence on federal prosecutors, senators, a Supreme Court justice. Where does he keep it? The compound. Underground vault. Military-grade security. Can you get me inside? Ryan stared at her. You want to raid Dmitry's compound? While simultaneously dismantling your own empire. In less than 24 hours. I want leverage. If Dmitry has evidence that can destroy politicians, then I want that evidence. Because once we rebuild, we are going to need protection from people like Michael Prospero and his FBI friends. You're insane. Maybe. But I'm the kind of insane that survives. So I'll ask again, can you get me inside? Ryan looked at Cameron, who nodded slightly. Then he looked at Elena, really looked at her, and saw something that made him smile despite everything. Yeah, he said. I can get you inside. But cousin, if we are doing this, if we are betraying my father and destroying your empire and raiding his compound all in one night, we are going to need more people, Elena finished. I know. She pulled out her phone and made a call she'd sworn never to make. It rang 3 times before a familiar voice answered. Grace, Elena said. I need a lawyer. And I need a friend. And I need you to trust me one more time even though I've given you no reason to. Silence on the other end. Then, what kind of trouble are you in? The kind that ends with either me in prison or my uncle dead. Possibly both. More silence. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Grace hung up. Elena looked at the people surrounding her, her family, by blood and by choice. The people who would follow her into hell if she asked. The people who'd bet their lives on her leadership. 12 hours, she said. We have 12 hours to dismantle an empire, raid a fortress, and steal evidence from a man who's been planning his revenge for longer than some of you have been alive. 12 hours to do the impossible. And if we fail? James asked. Then we'd die trying. But we'd die knowing we didn't give him the satisfaction of taking what's ours. We burned it down ourselves. Margaret raised her glass. Vodka. Always vodka. To scorched earth. To scorched earth, the room echoed. They drank. And Elena felt something settle in her chest, something cold and sharp and absolutely certain. Dmitry had taught her to be ruthless. He'd taught her to sacrifice. He'd taught her that empires were built on blood and maintained through fear. But he'd forgotten one crucial lesson. Sometimes the most ruthless thing you can do is destroy what you love to keep it from falling into the wrong hands. And as the clock ticked toward midnight, toward the moment when everything would burn or everything would be reborn, Elena couldn't help but wonder if this was what her parents had felt 12 years ago. This certainty, this clarity, this acceptance that some battles can only be won by being willing to lose everything. She just hoped she'd survive long enough to see if the gamble paid off. Because in 12 hours, Elena Kim would either be dead, imprisoned, or standing in the ashes of everything she'd built, waiting to see if anything could grow from the ruins. And honestly, she had no idea which outcome was most likely. Grace arrived exactly 20 minutes later, still wearing pajamas under her coat, her hair hastily pulled back, her eyes red from crying or lack of sleep or both. She walked into Margaret's study like she was walking into a war room. Because she was. Show me everything, Grace said without preamble. Every document. Every transfer. Every piece of evidence. If I'm going to help you do something catastrophically illegal, I need to know exactly how illegal and exactly what loopholes we can exploit. Elena had never loved her friend more than in that moment. For the next 3 hours, they worked. Grace reviewed contracts while Daniel, still unaware he'd been exposed, initiated transfers under Elena's carefully worded instructions. Victor coordinated logistics with Isabella. James assembled a tactical team from the members they absolutely trusted. Margaret made calls to old contacts, pulling favors that were decades old. And Ryan drew maps of his father's compound, marking security positions, guard rotations, vulnerable entry points. The vault is here, he said, pointing to a section in the underground level. Biometric locks, pressure sensors, the works. Even if you get inside the compound, getting into the vault is nearly impossible. Nearly, Elena repeated. Not completely. You'd need Dmitry's fingerprints, retinal scan, and voice authentication. All 3, simultaneously. So we get all 3. Ryan laughed. You're talking about kidnapping my father, forcing him to open his own vault, and stealing his insurance files, while simultaneously dismantling your organization and staying ahead of an FBI investigation. He checked his watch, 9 hours. 8.5, Elena corrected. We need travel time. You're insane. You've said that already. Grace looked up from her laptop, her face pale. Elena, these transfers, if anyone traces them, you're looking at money laundering charges, tax evasion, possibly RICO violations. Even if we move everything to legitimate accounts, the paper trail alone could put me in prison for 20 years, Elena finished. I know. That's why we are doing it right. Clean breaks. International holdings that can't be easily traced. Cryptocurrency that exists outside traditional banking. By the time anyone unravels where the money went, it'll be too late to recover it. And your legitimate businesses. Dissolve them. File bankruptcy if we have to. Make it look like the organization collapsed under investigation. By morning, Elena Kim the businesswoman will be ruined. But Elena Kim the criminal will have enough money hidden away to rebuild, Grace said quietly. That's the plan. That's the plan. Grace was silent for a long moment. Then she pulled up another document. If you're going to burn it all down, do it right. Don't just dissolve the businesses, sell them. Fire sale prices, but legitimate transactions. That way you can claim you were trying to salvage what you could from the investigation. Makes you look desperate instead of strategic. Elena stared at her friend. That's brilliant. I'm a good lawyer. Grace's smile was sad. Even when I'm helping my best friend commit financial fraud. Grace. Don't apologize. Don't explain. Just, Grace's voice broke slightly. Promise me this is worth it. Promise me you're not destroying your life for pride or revenge or... I'm doing it for survival, Elena said softly. Dmitri won't stop until I'm dead or destroyed. This is the only way I stay alive and keep my family safe. Grace nodded, not quite believing but choosing to trust anyway. Then let's make sure you survive. By 6 a.m., the transfers were nearly complete. $2 billion, the accumulated wealth of 3 generations of the Kim family, was being systematically moved into accounts across 17 countries. Shell corporations were being dissolved. Partnership agreements were being terminated. Properties were being listed for immediate sale. Elena's empire was bleeding out in real time. And Daniel was starting to notice. Boss, he said, appearing in the study with his tablet, his expression concerned. These transfers, I'm seeing patterns that don't make sense. We are liquidating assets at a loss, moving money into risky offshore accounts, dissolving profitable partnerships. If I didn't know better, I'd think. You'd think I was panicking, Elena said smoothly. Because I am. The FBI warrants. My uncle resurfacing. The investigation. I'm protecting what I can before they seize everything. Daniel studied her face, and Elena saw the moment he decided whether to believe her. Boss, if you're trying to hide assets from federal investigators, there are better ways. I don't want better ways. I want fast ways. Ways that get money out of reach before dawn. This is going to trigger every financial alarm from here to Washington. They'll know you're moving assets. Good. Let them know. Let them think I'm desperate and scared and making mistakes. Because that's exactly what I want them to think. Daniel's expression shifted, just slightly, just for a second, and Elena knew. He believed her. Or rather, he believed she was panicking enough to make tactical errors. Which meant he'd report back to Dmitri that Elena was crumbling exactly as planned. I'll keep processing the transfers, Daniel said. But boss, this is going to hurt. These losses are going to be felt for years. I know, Elena said, injecting just enough desperation into her voice. But I'd rather take the losses than let the FBI seize everything. Daniel left, and Elena watched him go, feeling something cold settle in her chest. 8 years. He'd been with her for 8 years, pretending loyalty while serving Dmitri. 8 years of lies so deep she'd never suspected. He bought it, Victor said quietly from the doorway. He bought it, Elena confirmed. Which means Dmitri will think I'm exactly where he wants me, desperate, scared, and bleeding money. He won't see the real plan until it's too late. And if he does see it? Elena didn't answer. Because if Dmitri saw through the deception, if he realized what she was really doing, then everything collapsed and they'd have destroyed the empire for nothing. At 7 a.m., Margaret received a phone call. She listened for 30 seconds, her face draining of color, before hanging up. That was Father Morrison, she said quietly. He's dead. The room went silent. What? Elena whispered. They found him this morning. In the cathedral. Single gunshot to the head. Margaret's voice shook, and a message carved into the altar, no more warnings. Elena felt the floor tilt beneath her. Father Morrison, the elderly priest who'd baptized her, who'd presided over her parents' funeral, who'd been one of the few truly good people in her life. Dead. Because Dmitri was sending a message. There were security cameras, Isabella said, already pulling up footage on her tablet. The cathedral has. Nothing, she said after a moment. Footage is gone. Professionally wiped. Whoever did this knew what they were doing. Dmitri, Elena said flatly. Maybe. Or someone working for him. Elena thought about Father Morrison's last words to her yesterday. Asterisk, your mother would have done exactly the same thing. Asterisk. He'd known. He'd always known what the Kim family was, what Elena was, and he'd chosen compassion over judgment. And now he was dead because Dmitri wanted to hurt her. Boss, Victor said carefully, this changes things. Dmitri's not waiting until midnight. He's moving now. And he's targeting civilians, people outside the organization. He's targeting people I care about, Elena corrected. She pulled out her phone, her fingers shaking slightly. Grace. I need to get Grace to safety. And anyone else Dmitri might. Her phone buzzed. A text from the unknown number. Asterisk asterisk, the priest was a warning. Keep dismantling your empire. Keep thinking you're clever. But know this, everyone you've ever cared about is on my list. And I'm working through it faster than you can protect them. How many will die before you surrender? Uncle D asterisk asterisk. Elena showed the message to Margaret, whose face had gone from pale to furious. He's declaring total war, Margaret said. No rules. No boundaries. He'll kill everyone connected to you until you give him what he wants. Then we move faster. Elena turned to Victor. Get protection details on everyone. Grace, her family, anyone at the legal firm who knows her connection to me. Anyone Dmitri could use as leverage. Boss, we don't have enough people to protect everyone. Then we prioritize. Grace first. Then expand the circle as we can. Victor hesitated. Boss, there's something else. While you were working on transfers, I was monitoring Daniel's communications. He made a call at 5:47 a.m. Encrypted channel, but we caught fragments. He played the audio, staticky, broken, but clear enough. Target secured, moving, compound by, proceed as. He's coordinating something, Elena said. Something at the compound. Or something with whoever he called, Isabella added. Boss, what if this whole plan, the raid on Dmitri's compound, what if Daniel knows about it? What if he's setting us up? Elena's blood ran cold. They'd discussed the raid in front of Ryan, Cameron, and Grace. Not in front of Daniel. But if Daniel had surveillance, if he'd been monitoring them. Check the study for bugs, Elena ordered immediately. Every room we've used. Every phone line. Every computer. If Daniel's been feeding information to Dmitri, I need to know how much he knows. Isabella's team swept the mansion. They found 6 listening devices. In the study. In Margaret's bedroom. In the hallway outside the basement. Everywhere that mattered. How long have these been here? Elena asked. Based on the battery life? At least 3 months. Maybe longer. 3 months. Daniel had been recording them for 3 months. Which meant Dmitri knew about the raid. Knew about the scorched earth plan. Knew about Ryan's betrayal. Knew everything. It's a trap, Victor said flatly. The compound. The vault. All of it. Dmitri's been listening to us plan our own ambush. Elena sat down heavily, her mind racing through implications. Everything she'd planned, the transfers, the raid, the evidence, all of it was compromised. Dmitri had been 3 steps ahead the entire time. Again. Boss. James appeared in the doorway, his expression grim. We have another problem. The FBI raids happened early. They hit our warehouses at 6 a.m. instead of dawn. Arrested 15 people. Seized everything. 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 Including, James paused, your personal files. The ones we thought were secure in the Warehouse 3 office. Elena felt the walls closing in. The FBI had her files. Daniel had been spying on them. Dmitri knew about the raid. Father Morrison was dead. And midnight was still 5 hours away. 5 hours for everything to get worse. We are compromised, she said quietly. Completely. Dmitri's been watching us scramble, letting us think we are being clever, and the whole time he's been ready for everything we are planning. Then we abort, Victor said immediately. Pull back. Regroup. Find another way. There is no other way, Margaret said. If we stop now, Dmitri gets everything. The empire Elena's been dismantling, the money she's been moving, it all becomes evidence of panic and poor leadership. He'll use it to prove she's incompetent and take over anyway. And if we proceed with a plan he knows about? Grace asked. Silence. Because there was no good answer. If they proceeded, they walked into a trap. If they didn't proceed, they destroyed their own empire for nothing. We need more information, Elena said finally. We need to know exactly what Dmitri knows and what he's planning. And there's only one person who can tell us. She turned to look at the tablet showing Daniel's location, currently in his apartment across town, probably reporting to Dmitri about the night's activities. We bring him in, Elena said. Now, before he can report anything else. before Dmitry knows we've discovered the bugs. Boss, if we move against Daniel, Dmitry will know immediately. He'll know anyway. The bugs are found. Daniel will realize we swept for surveillance. Our window is closing. Elena stood, her decision made. James, take a team. Bring Daniel here. Use whatever force necessary, but I need him alive and talking. What if he doesn't talk? Elena's expression went cold. Everyone talks eventually. The question is just how much pain they can endure first. James left to coordinate the extraction. Grace looked at Elena with something like horror. You're going to torture him. I'm going to do whatever's necessary to protect my family. That's not who you are. Yes, Elena interrupted softly. It is. This is exactly who I am, Grace. This is what I've been trying to tell you. I'm not the friend you binge reality TV with. I'm the woman who orders torture when necessary, who kills when necessary, who burns down her own empire when necessary. That's who I've always been. Grace stared at her, and Elena saw the moment something broke between them. I can't, Grace started, then stopped. I can't watch you become this. I'm not becoming anything. I'm just finally showing you what I've always been. Grace gathered her laptop, her files, her coat. I've done what you asked. The transfers are legal, barely. The dissolutions will hold up in court. You have your scorched earth. Grace. Don't. Grace's voice was firm. I helped you tonight because you're my friend and you asked. But this? What you're about to do to Daniel? I can't be part of that. I won't be. She walked toward the door, pausing only once. I hope it's worth it, she said quietly. I hope destroying everything, your empire, your friendships, your humanity, I hope it's worth whatever you get in return. She left, and Elena watched her go, feeling something crack in her chest that she'd spent 18 months pretending wasn't already broken. Boss, Victor said carefully, we can still. We proceed, Elena interrupted. Get Daniel. Get answers. Figure out what Dmitry really knows and what we can still salvage from this disaster. At 9:47 a.m., James returned with Daniel. The financial strategist was drugged, sedated enough to be compliant but conscious enough to question. They'd taken no chances with his extraction. Elena found him strapped to a chair in the basement, looking small and frightened and utterly unlike the confident man who'd saved her empire dozens of times. Why? She asked simply. Daniel's eyes focused on her, and she saw resignation there. He has my daughter, Daniel said quietly. Elena felt the floor tilt again. What? My daughter. From my previous life. Before I came to you. Dmitry found her, tracked her down, and has had her for 3 years. Every report I gave him, every piece of information I passed along, it was all to keep her alive. You never mentioned a daughter. Because mentioning her would have put her at risk. Dmitry made that very clear. Cooperate silently, report regularly, and she lives. Talk, and she dies. Elena thought about Cameron and his sister, about how Dmitry used family as leverage, about how every single person he'd manipulated had been protecting someone they loved. Where is she? Elena asked. The compound. Underground level, near the vault. Daniel's voice broke. She's 17. She doesn't even know why she's being held. Dmitry told her she's in protective custody. That I'm a criminal and she's safer with him. Elena looked at Victor, at Margaret, at the people surrounding her. Dmitry has been collecting hostages, she said. Not just Daniel's daughter. Probably others. People connected to everyone in the organization. Insurance policies to guarantee loyalty. Which means, Margaret said slowly, the raid on the compound isn't just about stealing evidence. It's about rescuing hostages. And if we don't go, Victor added, if we abort the plan, Daniel's daughter dies. And probably others. Elena thought about her choices. Go forward with a raid Dmitry knew about, walking into a trap to save hostages. Or protect her own life, abandon the hostages, and watch Dmitry use their deaths to break everyone's loyalty. It wasn't really a choice at all. We go, she said. But we change the plan. Dmitry knows about the raid, so we give him the raid he's expecting. Full assault, obvious approach, exactly what he's prepared for. That's suicide, Isabella protested. That's a distraction, Elena corrected. While he's focused on the frontal assault, a smaller team goes in the back way. Gets to the hostages. Gets to the vault. Gets out before Dmitry realizes what happened. And the assault team takes heavy casualties. Maybe all casualties. But they buy time for the real mission. Victor stared at her. Boss, you're talking about sending people to die as a distraction. I'm talking about saving hostages and stealing evidence that will destroy Dmitry. Sometimes the mission requires sacrifice. You can't ask people to. I'm not asking. I'm ordering. Elena's voice was ice. And I'm leading the assault team myself. The room erupted in protest. Boss, absolutely not. That's insane. You can't. Enough. Margaret's voice cut through the chaos. She looked at Elena with something like pride and something like grief. You're going to lead the suicide mission. Yes. While Victor takes the extraction team. Yes. And if you die. Then I die knowing Dmitri's leverage dies with me. Knowing the hostages are saved. Knowing Victor gets the evidence needed to destroy everyone who's helped Dmitri. Elena met her grandmother's eyes. Knowing I did what my parents couldn't, I protected the family. Margaret was silent for a long moment. Then she nodded. Your parents would be proud. And furious. But mostly proud. She turned to Victor. You have your orders. Get those hostages out. Get that evidence. And if my granddaughter dies in the process. I'll make sure Dmitri follows shortly after, Victor finished grimly. The next 3 hours were preparation. Weapons. Tactical gear. Routes and contingencies and evacuation plans. Elena briefed her assault team, 12 people, all volunteers who understood this was likely a one-way mission. Victor briefed his extraction team, 8 people, specialists in infiltration and hostage rescue. Ryan provided final details about the compound, his face pale with the knowledge that he was helping orchestrate an attack on his father. And at 12:47 p.m., 5 hours before midnight, Elena's phone rang. Dmitri's voice was almost gentle. Hello, niece. I hear you've had a difficult morning. Nothing I can't handle. Really? Because it sounds like you've destroyed your own empire, lost your best friend, discovered your most trusted advisor was spying for me, and now you're planning a suicide mission against my compound. He laughed. How am I doing so far? Elena felt her blood run cold. How do you? No. Because I'm always 3 steps ahead, Elena. Always. The bugs in your grandmother's house were just one source. I have people everywhere. Watching. Listening. Reporting. Did you really think you could outmaneuver me? I guess we'll find out. No, we won't. Because I'm going to make you an offer. One chance to save everyone you care about. I'm listening. Surrender. Come to the compound alone. Kneel before me and acknowledge that I am the rightful leader of this family. Do that, and I'll let everyone live. The hostages. Your grandmother. Even your assault team. Everyone walks away. Everyone except me. You'll be alive. Imprisoned. Yes. Under my control, yes. But alive. Which is better than what happens if you refuse. Elena thought about her team preparing for a suicide mission. About Daniel's daughter in a cell. About everyone who would die if this went wrong. What's your answer, niece? Elena looked at Margaret, who shook her head sharply. She looked at Victor, who mouthed, don't. She looked at the team preparing to die for her, for the family, for a cause they believed in. My answer, Elena said clearly, is no. I don't surrender. I don't kneel. And I sure as hell don't acknowledge you as anything except a murderer who killed his own brother and is about to discover that his niece learned from his mistakes. Silence on the other end. Then Dmitri's voice, cold as winter. Then everyone dies. Starting with the priest. Oh wait, I already handled that one. Maybe I'll move on to your lawyer friend next. Or that bartender you're always so friendly with. Or the hostages in my basement. So many choices. If you hurt Grace. You'll what? You're running out of pieces, Elena. Running out of time. Running out of options. By midnight tonight, you'll have nothing left. No empire. No family. No allies. Just you, alone, with the knowledge that everyone who died did so because you were too proud to surrender. Or, Elena said quietly, by midnight tonight, you'll be dead and I'll be standing over your body explaining to Ryan what happens to men who underestimate women. She hung up. Her hands were shaking. Boss, Victor said carefully. He's right. The odds are terrible. I know. We are walking into a trap. We are outnumbered and outgunned. We are probably going to die. Elena looked at her team. But we are doing it anyway. Because that's what family does. We protect each other. Even when it costs everything. She checked her weapons, her gear, her resolve. At 2 p.m., 10 hours before midnight, 10 hours before Dmitri's final victory or ultimate defeat, Elena Kim led her team out of Margaret's estate. Toward a compound built to withstand assault. Toward a trap designed to kill her. Toward a confrontation with the uncle who'd murdered her parents and spent 12 years planning her destruction. She destroyed her empire to save it. Lost her best friend to protect her. Discovered her most trusted advisor's betrayal. And now she was walking into certain death to save hostages and steal evidence from a man who'd thought of everything. But here's the thing about suicide missions. Sometimes the person expected to die is the only one who survives. Sometimes walking into a trap is the only way to spring it. And sometimes the darkest hour is just before something breaks. The enemy, the siege, or the hero who realizes too late that she's been playing the wrong game all along. Elena just hoped she figured out which one before the bullets started flying and the compound went up in flames with everyone she loved still inside. The compound rose from the mountain like a fortress from another age. Stone walls, reinforced gates, security cameras covering every angle. Elena watched from the tree line 200 yards away, her tactical team spread out beside her, and felt the weight of every decision that had led to this moment. 23 guards visible, Isabella reported through the comm, probably double that inside. Military-grade weapons. They're expecting us. Good, Elena said. Let them expect us. Victor, are you in position? Affirmative. Back entrance, 300 yards northeast. Waiting on your signal. Ryan, talk to me about the hostages. Ryan's voice came through, shaky but determined. Underground level, west wing. 6 cells. I saw at least 4 people being held there last week. Don't know if there are more now. Guard rotation. Changes every 4 hours. Next rotation is at, he paused, 1,600 hours. 37 minutes. Elena checked her watch. Not enough time to wait. They'd have to go now, during the current rotation, when Dmitri's guards were settled into their posts and not expecting action until nightfall. Everyone clear on the plan? Elena asked. Her assault team confirmed. 12 people ready to create chaos, draw fire, and die if necessary to give Victor's extraction team their window. Boss, James said quietly, for what it's worth, it's been an honor. Elena looked at him, at all of them, these people who'd chosen to follow her knowing it might be their last choice. The honor's mine, she said. Whatever happens today, remember that. You didn't die for nothing. You died protecting family. She raised her weapon, took a breath, and was about to give the signal when her phone buzzed. Grace's name appeared. Elena almost ignored it. They were seconds from assault, no time for distractions, but something made her answer. Grace, this isn't a good. Dmitri has me, Grace said, her voice shaking. I left your grandmother's estate and went home and he was waiting. Elena. He has me and he says if you attack the compound, he'll. The phone shifted. Dmitri's voice came through, smooth as poison. Hello again, niece. Change of plans. I have your lawyer friend. Quite resourceful, actually. She tried to fight. But now she's here, at the compound, and I think you understand what that means. Elena's world narrowed to a single point of rage. If you hurt her. I won't. Not if you listen very carefully. You have 2 choices. 1. Proceed with your assault. My men will defend, you'll die, and Grace dies with you. 2. Surrender yourself. Walk through the front gate alone, unarmed, and I'll let Grace go. I'll even let your assault team leave. Everyone lives except you. Why would I trust you? Because I give you my word as family. And because, Dmitri's voice softened, I don't actually want to kill you, Elena. I want to teach you. Want you to understand what your father should have understood. That power requires ruthlessness. That family requires sacrifice. That empires are built by those willing to do anything. You murdered my parents. I freed the organization from weakness, just as I'm trying to free it from your softness now. You've done well, niece. Better than I expected. But you're still too human. Too attached. Too willing to risk everything for people who don't matter. Grace matters. Exactly. And that's your weakness. But it's a weakness I can train out of you. If you live. If you choose wisely. Elena looked at her assault team, ready to die for her. Looked at the compound, where hostages waited for rescue. Looked at her phone, where Grace's life hung on her next words. 10 minutes, she said. I need 10 minutes to think. You have 5. Dmitri hung up. Elena stood in the forest, weapon in hand, team ready to move, and felt the full weight of leadership crushing down on her shoulders. Every choice led to death. Attack, her team dies, Grace dies, maybe the hostages die. Surrender, she dies, but maybe everyone else lives. Abort, Grace dies, hostages die, Dmitri wins completely. Boss. Victor's voice through the comm, what's happening? Elena explained, quickly, efficiently, without emotion because emotion would break her. When she finished, silence hung heavy on the channel. Then Victor said, we proceed with the plan. Grace wouldn't want you to surrender for her. None of us would. Victor. Boss, with respect, this is what Dmitri does. He finds leverage. Makes you choose between bad options. Makes you sacrifice yourself to save others. Don't let him manipulate you the way he manipulated Cameron, Daniel, everyone else. Grace isn't leverage, Elena said. She's my friend. And she'd tell you the same thing I'm telling you. Complete the mission. Save the hostages. Get the evidence. Stop Dmitri, even if it costs her life. Elena knew he was right. Knew Grace would say exactly that. Knew the strategic play was to proceed, accept Grace's death as collateral damage, and complete the mission. But strategy was cold comfort when you were condemning your best friend to death. There has to be another way, Elena whispered. There isn't, Margaret's voice came through. She'd been patched into the comm from the estate. There's only the choice you make and the consequences you live with. Your father faced a similar choice once. He chose peace. He chose negotiation. He chose the path that seemed humane. And Dmitri killed him for it. Are you saying I should let Grace die? I'm saying you need to be willing to. That's the difference between you and your father. He couldn't make the ruthless choice. You can. The question is, will you? Elena thought about her father, the man who'd wanted peace, who'd tried to build something sustainable, who'd believed family meant loyalty. And she thought about what that belief had cost him. His life. His wife. Everything he'd built. Boss, Isabella said suddenly. I have eyes on Grace. Northeast tower, 3rd floor window. She's alone. Just one guard. Elena's mind sparked. Dmitri had called Grace's capture a change of plans, which meant it was improvised. Reactive. Not part of his careful 12-year strategy, which meant it might not be as secure as the rest of his operation. Isabella, can you take the shot? On the guard? Maybe. It's 300 yards, elevated position, wind is. Not the guard. The window lock. Can you shoot it out from here? Silence while Isabella calculated angles and physics. Yes. But boss, even if I shatter the lock, Grace is 3 stories up. She'd need a way down. Elena looked at her assault team. 12 people ready to die. Or 12 people who could create enough chaos that no one noticed a rescue operation on the northeast tower. New plan, Elena said, her mind racing ahead 3 moves, for moves, seeing the board differently now. Assault team splits. James, take 6 people. Hit the main gate exactly as planned. Make noise. Draw every guard. Make Dmitri think the frontal assault is all we've got. And the rest of us? Isabella asked. With me. We're getting Grace out that window before Dmitri knows we are there. Boss, that's insane. I know. But it's the only play that saves Grace and gives Victor his window for extraction. Everyone else is watching the gate. No one's watching one window on the northeast tower. What about Dmitri's ultimatum? He's expecting you to surrender. Elena smiled grimly. Then let's not keep him waiting. Victor, how's your Dmitri impression? Boss. Dmitri knows my voice. He's been listening to me for 12 years. But he doesn't know yours. And on a comm channel, with static and interference, voices sound different. Understanding dawned. You want me to impersonate you. Walk through the front gate pretending to surrender. While I get Grace out the back. By the time Dmitri realizes I sent a decoy. We'll have the hostages out and the evidence extracted. Boss, that's the only chance we have. Will it work? Victor was silent for 3 seconds that felt like hours. It'll work once. Maybe twice. Then Dmitri will realize and everything goes sideways. Then we better move fast. Elena quickly reorganized the teams. James leading the assault. Isabella and 5 others with her for the tower rescue. Victor and his team for hostage extraction. Everyone moving simultaneously. Everyone depending on everyone else. One massive coordinated strike on a fortress designed to repel exactly this kind of attack. 5 minutes, Elena said. We move in 5 minutes. James, you go first. Make the biggest entrance possible. Victor, you walk through the gate 30 seconds later. Isabella and I move on the tower when the shooting starts. Everyone clear. Confirmations came through. Elena checked her weapon, her gear, her resolve. Then Ryan's voice crackled through. Wait, there's something you need to know. What? My father, he mentioned something earlier. About a failsafe. If the compound is breached, if he feels threatened, he has a way to, Ryan's voice shook, to destroy everything. The evidence, the hostages, the entire compound. He said it's insurance against anyone trying to take him by force. What kind of failsafe? Explosives. The whole compound is rigged. He has a dead man switch. If his heart stops, if he loses consciousness, if someone tries to extract him, the whole place goes up. Elena felt ice water flood her veins. How much explosive? Enough to level the mountain. Everything within half a mile turns to crater. And you're just mentioning this now. I just remembered. He talked about it once when he was drunk, said it was his ultimate protection. I thought he was exaggerating. Elena looked at the compound, at the fortress that was apparently also a bomb, at Grace in the tower, at the hostages underground, at the evidence they needed, all of it sitting on top of enough explosives to kill everyone within half a mile. Can we disarm it? Elena asked. I don't know. I don't know where the charges are, how they're wired, how the dead man's switch works. I don't know anything except that if Dmitri dies or gets knocked out, we all die. So we can't kill him, Victor said flatly. We can't even subdue him without triggering the failsafe. Which means, Elena said slowly, we have to keep him alive and conscious through the entire operation. Have to make sure he doesn't activate the switch manually. Have to complete the mission while managing a hostage who's also our greatest threat. That's impossible, James said. Then we better get creative. Elena's mind raced through new scenarios, new approaches, new terrible gambles. Ryan, does your father know you've betrayed him? I don't think so. The bugs were removed before I started helping you. So as far as Dmitri knows, you're still loyal to him. Yes, but I don't see how. You're going to walk through the front gate. Not Victor pretending to be me. You, his son, going home after helping coordinate my assault, going to warn him that I'm coming. He'll want details, plans. He'll know I'm lying. You won't be lying. You'll tell him exactly what we are planning. The assault on the main gate. The extraction team going for the hostages. All of it. Because while you're telling him that, while he's focused on what he expects, we hit him with what he doesn't expect, Isabella finished. A rescue operation on Grace. A non-lethal extraction of Dmitri himself. Taking him alive, keeping him conscious, using him to disarm his own failsafe. Can we do that? Victor asked. We have to, Elena said. Because any other play ends with everyone dead and Dmitri winning from beyond the grave. She turned to Ryan, who looked terrified and determined in equal measure. Can you do this? Can you face your father, lie to him convincingly enough that he doesn't trigger the failsafe, and keep him distracted while we dismantle his entire operation around him? Ryan swallowed hard. I've been lying to myself about who my father is for years. I think I can manage a few more minutes. Then that's the play. Elena addressed the full team. New objectives. Grace extraction from Northeast Tower. Hostage extraction from underground. Evidence extraction from the vault. And capture, not kill, capture, of Dmitri Volkov before he can trigger his failsafe. We do all of it simultaneously. We do it fast, and we do it knowing that one mistake kills everyone. When you put it that way, James said, it sounds almost doable. It's not doable. It's desperate. But desperate is all we have left. Elena checked her watch. 2 minutes. Get in position. And everyone, if this works, if we somehow pull this off, remind me to never plan an operation this complicated again. If this works, Victor said, you're buying all of us drinks for a year. Deal. They moved into position. 3 teams, 3 objectives, 1 synchronized assault on an impossible target. Elena crouched in the forest with Isabella and her rescue team, watching the Northeast Tower where Grace was being held, waiting for the signal that would change everything. Her phone buzzed. Margaret's name. Grandma, I'm in the middle of. I know. That's why I'm calling. To tell you something your father never heard. Something I should have told him before he walked into his last negotiation. What's that? That sometimes the ruthless choice and the humane choice are the same thing. Sometimes saving everyone requires risking everyone. Sometimes the only way to win is to bet everything on a hand that shouldn't work but does anyway because you believed it would. Elena felt tears prick her eyes. I'm scared, Grandma. Good. Fear keeps you sharp. Just don't let it make you hesitate. When the moment comes, when you see your opening, you take it. No second guessing. No doubt. You move. And if I'm wrong, then you die knowing you tried. But Elena. Margaret's voice softened. You're not wrong. You're brilliant and ruthless and more like me than your father ever was. You're going to win this. And when you do, when you're standing over Dmitri's captured body, when the hostages are safe and Grace is alive and the evidence is secured, remember this moment. Remember what it cost. Remember what you sacrificed to get here. Why? Because someday, someone will try to take this from you. Just like Dmitri tried. And you'll need to remember that you've already survived the worst. That nothing they throw at you will be harder than today. That you're the woman who destroyed her own empire and rebuilt it from the ashes. Elena wiped her eyes. I love you, Grandma. I love you too. Lapochka star. Now go. Bring my family home. The line went dead. Elena raised her weapon and watched the compound gates open. Ryan walked through, alone, his posture perfect, his expression neutral. Seconds later, James and his team hit the main gate with overwhelming force. Explosions, gunfire, chaos designed to pull every guard in the compound toward the attack. Guards poured out of buildings, sprinting toward the main gate, weapons raised. The northeast tower entered. Now, Elena whispered. Isabella fired. One shot, precise and perfect, shattering the window lock on the third floor. Elena and her team sprinted from the tree line, crossing 200 yards of open ground in seconds, reaching the tower base just as the first return fire started. Rope, Elena ordered. Two of her team launched grappling hooks, securing lines to the window frame. Elena climbed, hand over hand, 3 stories up, her muscles screaming, gunfire echoing from the main gate, everything happening too fast and not fast enough. She reached the window, grabbed the frame, pulled herself through, and found Grace sitting calmly in a chair, her hands zip-tied in front of her face bruised but her eyes clear. Took you long enough, Grace said. Elena almost laughed, almost cried. Definitely wanted to hug her friend, but there was no time. Can you climb? Elena asked, cutting the zip ties. After today, I can do anything. They went down the rope together, Grace moving slower but steadier than Elena expected. They hit the ground just as Victor's voice crackled through the comm. Hostages located. 4 prisoners, all alive. Beginning extraction. Evidence. Elena asked. Working on it. Ryan got us access codes, but the vault has secondary protocols. Daniel's helping. He knows the financial systems. Elena and Grace ran for the tree line. Isabella's team providing covering fire, bullets tearing up the ground around them. They made it to cover just as an explosion rocked the compound, Victor breaching the vault with controlled charges. Evidence secured, Victor reported. Files, hard drives, enough dirt to bury everyone Dmitri's been blackmailing. Moving to extraction point. Hostages. Elena asked. 2 minutes out. They're weak but mobile. Everything was working. Against all odds, against impossible chances, everything was actually working. Which was when Elena heard Ryan's voice through the comm, tight with fear. He knows. My father knows it's a setup. He's reaching for something, a device. I think it's the trigger. Stop him, Elena screamed. Gunshot through the comm. Someone screaming. Static. Then Ryan's voice, shaking. I shot him. I shot my own father. He's down, he's bleeding, but he's still conscious. He's trying to reach the trigger. Someone help me. Please, someone. Elena was already running, leaving Grace with Isabella's team, sprinting toward the compound's main building where Ryan was. She burst through doors, down corridors, following the sound of Ryan's panicked voice. Found him in an ornate office, kneeling over Dmitri, who lay bleeding from a shoulder wound, his hand stretched toward a device on the desk. Elena kicked the device away. Dmitri looked up at her, blood on his lips, and smiled. You're too late, he whispered. Already activated. 30-second delay. The mountain comes down in. He glanced at his watch. 23 seconds. Elena's world narrowed to crystal clarity. 23 seconds to evacuate a compound. Impossible. Unless. She grabbed the device Dmitri had been reaching for. A dead man switch, yes, but also a remote control with buttons labeled ARM, disarm, detonate. The ARM light was blinking red. Elena hit disarm. Nothing happened. Biometric lock, Dmitri said, his smile widening. Needs my fingerprint to disarm. And I'm not feeling cooperative. 15 seconds. Elena grabbed his hand, pressed his thumb to the sensor. Error. Incorrect finger. Index finger, Dmitri said helpfully. But you'll have to try all 5, won't you? And you have, he checked his watch, 11 seconds. Elena tried the index finger. Error. Middle finger. Error. 9 seconds. Boss, Victor's voice through the comm. Whatever you're doing. Get everyone out, Elena screamed. Full evacuation. Now. She tried the ring finger. Error. 6 seconds. Grace's voice in her head. Asterisk, I hope it's worth it. Asterisk. Margaret's voice. Asterisk, when the moment comes, you take it. No hesitation. Asterisk. Her father's voice, remembered from childhood. Asterisk, family is worth any sacrifice. Asterisk. 3 seconds. Elena pressed Dmitri's pinky finger to the sensor. The device beeped. The red light turned green. Disarmed appeared on the screen. Elena collapsed, the device falling from her shaking hands. Dmitri lay on the floor, bleeding and defeated and looking at her with something that might have been respect. You won, he said quietly. Against everything I planned, every advantage I had, you actually won. You taught me how, Elena said. You taught me to be ruthless, to sacrifice, to do whatever's necessary. You just forgot that those lessons work both ways. What happens now? Elena looked at Ryan, who stood trembling, a gun in his hand, staring at his father. Now, Elena said, we call an ambulance for you. We turn over your evidence to prosecutors who aren't on your payroll. We free the hostages. And you spend the rest of your life in prison thinking about how you train me to beat you. And my son. Elena looked at Ryan. Your son gets to choose his own path. Without you. Without your manipulation. Without your war. She stood, bones aching, heart hammering, and activated her comm. Status report. Everyone. Victor. Hostages extracted. All 4 alive. Medical en route. Isabella. Grace is safe. Tower team intact. James. Main assault complete. We lost 2. But the objective is accomplished. 2 dead. 2 people who trusted her, followed her, died for her mission. Elena would learn their names. Would memorize them. Would carry them. But right now, she had an empire to rebuild. Package secured, she reported. Dmitry Volkov in custody. Failsafe disarmed. Compound secured. Mission complete. Cheers erupted through the comm. Elena walked out of the office, leaving Dmitry bleeding on the floor with Ryan standing guard, and found herself in the compound courtyard where her teams were gathering. Grace ran to her, throwing her arms around Elena in a hug that hurt and healed simultaneously. You came for me, Grace whispered. Always, Elena said. Even when you walk away. Even when you can't watch what I become. I'll always come for you. I'm sorry. For leaving. For judging. For. Don't. You were right. I am becoming something. Something harder. Something that can make the ruthless calls. Elena pulled back, meeting Grace's eyes. But I'm also still your friend. Still the woman who needs you to remind me I'm human. Still Elena. Grace nodded, tears streaming. Then I'm not going anywhere. Because someone has to make sure you stay Elena. Even when being the Queen of Shadows is easier. They stood together in the courtyard while emergency services arrived, while federal agents swarmed the compound, while everything that had been broken started slowly, painfully, rebuilding. And Elena thought about her father, the man who'd wanted peace, who'd believed in family, who'd died because he wasn't ruthless enough. She'd been ruthless today. She'd made the terrible calls. She'd sacrificed everything to win. But she'd also saved everyone. Grace. The hostages. Her team. Her family. Maybe that was the difference. Maybe ruthlessness didn't have to mean cruelty. Maybe strength didn't have to mean isolation. Maybe the Queen of Shadows could be human and powerful simultaneously. Or maybe Elena was just too tired to see the truth, that today had changed her in ways she wouldn't understand for years. That the woman who'd walked into this compound wasn't the same woman walking out. That some victories cost more than defeat ever could. 3 days after the compound raid, Elena stood in a federal courthouse wearing a suit that cost more than most people's cars and answered questions from prosecutors who looked like they wanted to arrest her almost as much as they wanted to use her testimony. Ms. Kim, Assistant U.S. Attorney Patricia Morrison said, her voice crisp, let's be clear about what happened. You admit to conducting an unauthorized raid on private property. You admit to extracting individuals without legal authority. You admit to seizing evidence without a warrant. I admit to rescuing hostages who were being held illegally, Elena corrected. I admit to stopping a man who murdered my parents and was about to detonate enough explosives to kill hundreds of people. I admit to doing what law enforcement should have done if they'd been paying attention. Morrison's jaw tightened. We had ongoing investigations. Into warehouses I'd already abandoned. Into shell corporations that didn't exist anymore. You were investigating ghosts while Dmitry Volkov built a criminal empire right under your nose. Elena leaned forward. And you would have kept investigating ghosts if I hadn't handed you evidence of his entire operation, including proof that several federal prosecutors, she glanced meaningfully at the gallery where 2 very nervous-looking men sat, were on his payroll. Morrison followed her gaze, then looked back at Elena with something like respect. The evidence you provided has been authenticated. 12 years of financial records, communications, blackmail material. It's, she paused, comprehensive. Dmitry was thorough. He documented everything. Kept insurance files on everyone he worked with. Thought it would protect him. Elena smiled coldly. Turns out it just made our case easier. Our case, Morrison repeated. Interesting phrasing, considering you are under investigation yourself. Am I? Because from where I'm sitting, I'm the victim of attempted murder, fraud, and a 12-year conspiracy. I'm the person who provided you with enough evidence to dismantle the largest criminal network in the Pacific Northwest. I'm the reason Dmitry Volkov is in custody facing 17 federal charges instead of dead from the gunshot wound his own son gave him. About that son, Ryan Volkov. Where is he? Protected. Safe. Helping with the investigation voluntarily. We need to interview him. He'll make himself available when he's ready. Right now, he's processing the fact that his father used him as a weapon, held hostages to control people, and nearly killed everyone including his own son to maintain power. Elena's voice softened. Give him time. Morrison studied her for a long moment. You're very good at this. Answering questions without actually answering them. Providing information while maintaining control. Very good. I learned from the best. Unfortunately, the best was my uncle, and is currently in federal custody awaiting trial. Which brings us to the central question. Morrison leaned forward. Your business empire. The one you systematically dismantled 3 days ago. The financial transfers, the dissolved corporations, the liquidated assets. Where did $2 billion go, Ms. Kim? Elena had been waiting for this question. Grace, sitting beside her as legal counsel, spoke first. My client engaged in aggressive but legal financial restructuring in response to federal investigation. She sold assets, dissolved unprofitable partnerships, and relocated holdings to protect them from unjust seizure. Nothing illegal about any of that. Nothing illegal about moving $2 billion in 12 hours. Nothing illegal about a business owner liquidating her holdings when she believes those holdings are under threat. Grace pulled out documents. Elena had to admit, her friend had done brilliant work. Every transaction is documented. Every transfer is traceable. Every dissolution follows proper legal procedure. You might not like how fast it happened, but fast isn't illegal. Morrison looked at the documents, her expression darkening. And the new companies? The ones registered in the last 72 hours under different names? The ones that seem to have acquired assets remarkably similar to those Ms. Kim sold. Completely unrelated business ventures by private investors who saw an opportunity in a fire sale. Grace's expression didn't change. Unless you're suggesting my client somehow coordinated with multiple international investors simultaneously? In which case, I'd love to see your evidence. Morrison had no evidence. Elena had been very careful about that. The money had moved through so many accounts, so many jurisdictions, so many layers that connecting her to the new companies would take years of investigation, if it was even possible. By which time, the statute of limitations on most of the financial maneuvering would have expired. Your client is very clever, Morrison said finally. My client is very careful, Grace corrected. There's a difference. Morrison closed her files. We'll be watching, Ms. Kim. Very closely. If you so much as jaywalk in the next 5 years. You'll have evidence of jaywalking. Which, last I checked, isn't a federal offense. Elena stood. Are we done here? For now. But Ms. Kim. Morrison's expression was stone. Don't mistake prosecutorial discretion for approval. We know what you are. We know what you've done. And eventually, we'll prove it. Good luck with that, Elena said pleasantly. Outside the courthouse, news crews swarmed. Elena had prepared for this. The questions, the cameras, the public narrative that needed to be carefully constructed. Ms. Kim, is it true your uncle tried to kill you? Ms. Kim, sources say you destroyed your own business empire. Can you comment? Ms. Kim, what's your response to allegations you're connected to organized crime? Elena stopped at the top of the courthouse steps. Grace beside her, Victor and Isabella flanking them as security. She looked at the cameras and remembered what Margaret had taught her. Control the narrative or the narrative controls you. 3 days ago, Elena said, her voice carrying clearly. I learned that my uncle, a man I believed was dead, a man my family mourned for 12 years, was actually alive, and had orchestrated the murder of my parents. He'd spent those 12 years building a criminal network, designed to destroy everything my family built and frame me for his crimes. Cameras flashed. Reporters scribbled frantically. When I discovered this, I had choices. I could run. I could hide. I could let him win. Or I could fight back using every legal and ethical means available to me. Elena paused. I chose to fight. I chose to rescue hostages he was holding. I chose to gather evidence of his crimes. I chose to stop him before he could hurt anyone else. What about your business empire? Someone shouted. My businesses were built on legitimate trade. But when federal investigations began, I cooperated with fully. I made the difficult decision to restructure, to sell off assets that might be unjustly seized, to protect the livelihoods of hundreds of employees who depended on those businesses. Elena's expression was earnest, vulnerable, perfectly calculated. It wasn't what I wanted, but it was what I had to do to survive an attack that came from all sides, from my uncle, From law enforcement who assumed guilt before investigation. From competitors who saw my vulnerability as opportunity. So you're saying you're innocent? I'm saying I'm a survivor. My parents were murdered when I was 16. I inherited a business I barely understood. I built it into something successful through hard work and sacrifice. And when someone tried to destroy that, tried to destroy me, I fought back using legal means. If that makes me guilty of something, then I suppose I'm guilty of refusing to be a victim. She turned and walked down the steps, Grace beside her, ignoring the shouted questions. Victor had a car waiting. They climbed in, doors closing on the chaos. And Elena finally let herself breathe. You were perfect, Grace said. The wronged niece. The brave survivor. The businesswoman doing what she had to. They'll eat it up. Will they believe it? Some will. Some won't. But that's not the point. The point is you gave them a narrative that's sympathetic. That makes Dmitri the villain and you the victim fighting back. Public opinion matters almost as much as legal evidence. Elena looked out the window at Seattle passing by. Her city, her territory, her home that had almost been taken from her. Victor, status report on the reorganization. 97% complete. The old empire is officially dissolved. New companies are operational. Financial trails are buried deep enough that even the FBI's best forensic accountants will have trouble connecting you to the new holdings. Personnel. Everyone who is loyal is employed by the new companies. Everyone we suspected of being Dmitri's plants has been quietly let go with severance packages generous enough that they won't complain. Daniel. Victor's expression darkened. Daniel Corleone is cooperating fully with federal prosecutors. Witness protection. New identity. He and his daughter disappear after the trial. Elena thought about Daniel. 8 years of lies, 8 years of betrayal, but also a father protecting his child the only way he knew how. Make sure they're actually protected, Elena said quietly. Dmitri has allies we haven't identified yet. I don't want Daniel's daughter paying for her father's mistakes. Boss, Daniel betrayed us. Daniel did what I would have done in his position. He protected family. That doesn't make him innocent, but it makes him understandable. Elena looked at Victor. Make sure they're safe. Consider it a final payment for the 8 years he actually helped us before Dmitri's leverage turned him. Victor nodded, though he clearly disagreed. What about Ryan? Elena asked. Still at the safe house. Still processing. He asks about you every day. Tell him I'll visit soon. He saved all of us at that compound. He deserves to know he has family that isn't Dmitri. Her phone buzzed. Margaret's name. Grandma. How did it go with the prosecutors? Morrison suspects everything but can prove nothing. Grace was brilliant. We are in the clear legally, for now. Good. Come home. There's someone here who wants to see you. Who? Margaret hung up without answering. 20 minutes later, Elena walked into her grandmother's estate, the place that had been her war room, her sanctuary, her command center for the last 3 days. She found Margaret in the study with a woman Elena didn't recognize. Mid-50s, elegant, with eyes that held the same sharp intelligence as Margaret's. Elena, Margaret said, this is Katerina Rostova. She was a friend of your mother's. And, pause, she has information about your parents' death that changes everything we thought we knew. Elena felt the ground shift beneath her. What kind of information? Katerina stood, moving with a grace that suggested military training or ballet or both. Your mother didn't die in that car accident, Katerina said softly. Neither did your father. Not immediately. I saw their bodies. You saw bodies burned beyond recognition. Bodies that DNA testing confirmed were your parents. But Elena, Katerina's eyes filled with tears. What if the DNA testing was compromised? What if Dmitri needed you to believe they were dead so completely that you'd never look for them? Elena couldn't breathe. You're saying they're alive. I'm saying I don't know. But I'm saying 12 years ago, I helped your mother arrange a contingency plan. A way to disappear if things got too dangerous. A way to fake her death and your father's death if someone came after them. Katerina pulled out a photograph. This was taken 6 months ago. In Prague. The photograph showed 2 people at a cafe. Older than Elena remembered. Different hair. Different style. But the woman had her mother's smile. And the man had her father's eyes. This proves nothing, Elena whispered, even as hope and rage warred in her chest. It proves possibility. And it gives you a choice. Katerina set down the photograph. You can investigate. You can chase this lead. You can potentially find parents who've been hiding for 12 years while you suffered and built an empire and fought their battles. Or I can let them stay dead. Let them stay safe. Let them keep whatever life they've built. Elena looked at Margaret, whose face was unreadable. Did you know about the contingency plan? I suspected. When the bodies were too burned to identify without DNA, when certain details didn't match, I suspected. But I had no proof. And I had a 16-year-old girl who needed to be strong enough to lead. Telling you your parents might be alive would have destroyed you. So you let me believe they were dead for 12 years. I let you believe what you needed to believe to survive. Margaret's voice was firm. And you did survive. You became everything they hoped you'd be. Strong. Intelligent. Ruthless when necessary. A leader. Built on a lie. Built on necessity. Elena looked at the photograph again. These strangers who might be her parents, who might have abandoned her, who might have been hiding while she bled for their empire. Why would they do it? Elena asked. Why fake their deaths and leave me alone? Because Dmitri was going to kill all three of you, Katerina said gently. Your mother figured it out. The plot. The betrayal. But she knew if she confronted him, he'd accelerate his plans. So she arranged the accident. Made it look like he'd succeeded. Gave you to Margaret to raise while she and your father disappeared. Leaving me to fight a war they started. Leaving you alive. Which was all they could do. Katerina moved closer. Your mother loves you, Elena. Every day she stayed away has been torture. But she knew, they both knew, that if Dmitri discovered they were alive, he'd use you to flush them out. As long as he believed them dead, you were safe. Safe, Elena repeated bitterly. I've been fighting for my life for 12 years. But you've been alive to fight. That's what mattered to them. Elena thought about everything she'd survived. Everything she'd sacrificed. Everything she'd become. All of it because her parents had chosen to disappear rather than stand and fight. Chosen to let her inherit a war they'd started. Chosen to let her believe she was alone. Where are they? Elena asked quietly. Katerina hesitated. If I tell you, you have to promise not to contact them. Not until Dmitri's threat is completely neutralized. Not until it's safe. Dmitri's in federal custody facing life in prison. How much more neutralized can he get? He has allies we haven't identified. Resources we haven't found. Money we haven't traced. Until every piece of his network is dismantled, your parents are safer if he believes them dead. Katerina looked at Margaret. Tell her I'm right. Margaret nodded slowly. Katerina's right. If you contact them now, if Dmitri's allies discover they're alive, it gives his network something to use. A way to bargain. A way to hurt you. So what do I do? Elena asked. Just accept that my parents are alive and stay away from them? Pretend I don't know. You do what you've been doing, Margaret said. You lead. You rebuild. You make their sacrifice worth it by becoming the person they hoped you'd be. I already am that person. I became her thinking they were dead. Thinking I was avenging them. Thinking everything I built was honoring their memory. Elena's voice broke. And now you're telling me they weren't even dead to honor. Grace appeared in the doorway. She'd been waiting in another room, giving Elena space for this revelation. Elena, she said softly, whatever you're feeling right now, whatever you decide, I'm here. Elena looked at her friend, at her grandmother, at this stranger claiming to have news about parents who'd been dead for 12 years. Except they weren't dead. They were alive. And Elena had no idea if she wanted to scream or cry or find them and demand answers they might never be able to give. I need time, Elena said finally. Time to process this. Time to figure out if I even want them back in my life. Time to... She stopped. Time. Take all the time you need, Katerina said. But know that your mother asks about you. Every day. Wants to know if you're safe. If you're happy. If you've built a life worth living. Tell her. Elena paused, choosing her words carefully. Tell her I survived. Tell her I built an empire. Tell her I became everything she hoped and everything she feared. Tell her I'm alive and that's all she gets to know until I decide whether I want parents who abandon me. Katerina nodded, understanding. She left, and Elena was alone with Margaret and Grace. I need to see Dmitri, Elena said suddenly. Boss, that's not a good idea, Victor started, appearing from wherever he'd been monitoring the conversation. I need to see him. I need to ask him if he knew. If he knew they were alive and let me believe they were dead. If this whole war was built on a lie. Margaret was quiet for a long moment. If you do this, if you confront him, you're giving him power. Information he might use. He's in federal custody, facing life in prison. His network is dismantled. His allies are scattering. What power does he have left? The power to hurt you, Margaret said simply. To twist this revelation into a weapon. To make you doubt everything. I already doubt everything, Elena said. I might as well get answers. 2 hours later, Elena sat across from Dmitry Volkov in a federal holding facility. He looked smaller than she remembered. Older, diminished by the orange jumpsuit and the chains and the reality that his 12-year plan had failed completely. But his eyes were still sharp, still calculating. "Hello, niece," he said pleasantly, as if they were meeting for lunch instead of across a prison table. "I wondered when you'd come." "Did you know?" Elena asked without preamble. "About my parents. About them being alive." Dmitry's expression didn't change. "I wondered if you'd figured it out." "That's not an answer." "Yes," he said simply. "I knew." Elena felt something crack in her chest. "How long?" "Since the beginning. I arranged the accident, paid off the coroner, faked the DNA results. But," he smiled, "I made a mistake. I didn't check thoroughly enough. Didn't confirm they were actually in the car when it went over that ravine. By the time I realized they'd escaped, they were already gone. Deep cover. Protected by people I couldn't reach. And you let me believe they were dead. For 12 years. Because it served my purposes. A girl who believed her parents were murdered was more motivated than a girl who knew they'd abandoned her. A girl seeking vengeance was more focused than a girl seeking reunion." Dmitry leaned forward, chains rattling. "I needed you angry, Elena. Needed you driven. Needed you to become the leader you became. And you exceeded every expectation. You used me. I forged you. There's a difference. Your parents made you soft. They tried to teach you compassion and peace and all those weak virtues that get people killed in our world. I made you hard. Made you ruthless. Made you into someone who could survive what's coming." "What's coming?" "The real war. The one your parents were trying to prevent. The one I was trying to win. The one you'll have to fight now whether you're ready or not." Elena stared at him. "What are you talking about? Did you think I was the only one who wanted your family's empire? Did you think dismantling my network solved everything?" Dmitry's smile was terrible. "I was one player, Elena. One threat. But there are others. Bigger. More dangerous. More patient. They let me do the heavy lifting. Let me weaken you, test you, force you to reveal your capabilities. And now that they've seen what you can do, they'll come for me themselves," Elena finished. "Exactly. I was the opening act. The tutorial level. What comes next?" He shook his head. "What comes next will make our little family drama look like a training exercise. Then tell me who. Tell me what I'm facing." "Why would I do that?" "Because I'm family. Because you just spent 5 minutes explaining how you forged me into a weapon. Weapons are only useful if they're aimed at the right target." Dmitry studied her for a long moment. "You're more like me than you want to admit." "I'm nothing like you." "You're exactly like me. Ruthless when necessary. Willing to sacrifice anything for victory. Willing to destroy your own empire to keep it from falling into enemy hands." His eyes gleamed. "The only difference is that you still believe you can be ruthless and humane simultaneously. That you can lead an empire and keep your soul. That you can win without becoming the monster. And you don't believe that's possible." "I know it's not. Because I tried, once. When I was your age. When I still thought family meant something other than liability. Your grandfather taught me differently. Taught me that in our world, the only thing that matters is power. And power requires sacrifices. My grandfather loved his family. Your grandfather killed 3 of his brothers to secure his position. Exiled his own mother to a gulag when she opposed him. Built an empire on the graves of everyone who trusted him." Dmitry's smile was sad. "Your grandmother never told you that part, did she? Never told you that the man you're trying to honor was more monster than I ever was?" Elena looked at Margaret through the observation window. Her grandmother's face was stone, which meant Dmitry was telling the truth. "Even if that's true," Elena said slowly, "it doesn't justify what you did. Murdering your brother. Terrorizing your family. Trying to destroy me." "No," Dmitry agreed. "It just explains it. We are all products of what we survived, niece. Your grandfather survived the gulag by becoming worse than his captors. I survived your grandfather by becoming worse than him. And you," he looked at her with something that might have been pride, "you survived me by becoming exactly what I needed you to be." "And what's that?" "The monster who still thinks she's human. The queen who still believes in justice. The ruler who thinks power and compassion can coexist." He leaned back, chains rattling. "You're my masterpiece, Elena. My greatest creation. And I genuinely hope you survive what's coming. Because if you don't, if you fall to the next threat, then everything I built, everything I sacrificed, everything I did to forge you into this weapon, it'll all have been for nothing." Elena stood. "You're going to prison for the rest of your life." "Probably. But from prison, I can still offer advice, information, strategic guidance. The enemies you're facing, I know them. Know how they think. Know how they operate. If you're smart, you'll use me. Use my knowledge. Use my experience. Why would you help me? Because you're family, Dmitri said simply. And because I'd rather see you rule than watch this empire fall to outsiders. Blood matters, Elena. Even when it's poisoned. Even when it's broken. Blood is the only thing that's real. Elena turned to leave. One more thing, Dmitri called. Your parents. If you find them. When you confront them. Ask them why they chose abandonment over fighting. Ask them if their peace was worth your pain. Ask them if they're proud of the monster they forced you to become. I'm not a monster. Not yet, Dmitri agreed. But give it time. Give it one more war. One more betrayal. One more sacrifice. And then tell me what you see when you look in the mirror. Elena walked out, his words echoing in her mind. Outside the prison, Grace was waiting. Well, she asked, did you get your answers? I got answers, Elena said. I'm not sure they're the ones I wanted. Are they ever? They drove back to Margaret's estate in silence. That night, Elena stood on the balcony overlooking Seattle, her city, her territory, her empire rebuilt from ashes. Margaret joined her, 2 glasses of vodka in hand. Your grandfather, Elena said quietly. The things Dmitri said. Were they true? Margaret sipped her vodka. Your grandfather was a complicated man. He did terrible things. He also did necessary things. The line between the two, she shrugged. Sometimes that line doesn't exist. And you? Did you know what he was doing? The brothers he killed? His mother? I knew. I helped, sometimes. Because in our world, in our time, those were the prices that had to be paid. Your grandfather survived Stalin's purges. Survived the Gulag. Survived the chaos of the Soviet collapse. He did what he had to do. Just like Dmitri did. Just like you'll do. I won't become them. You already are them. You just haven't accepted it yet. Margaret set down her glass. But here's the thing, Lepochka. Being like them doesn't mean making their mistakes. You can be ruthless and still choose differently. You can be powerful and still choose compassion. You can be the monster and still be human. Dmitri said that's impossible. Dmitri's in prison. You're free. I'd say that proves him wrong. Elena thought about Cameron, the man she'd almost married, now in witness protection with his sister. About Daniel, the traitor protecting his daughter, now disappeared into federal custody. About Ryan, her cousin, who'd shot his own father to save her, now learning to be someone other than Dmitri's weapon. She'd given them all chances they didn't deserve. Shown them mercy that her grandfather wouldn't have. Made choices that Dmitri would have called weakness. And she'd won anyway. There are more threats coming, Elena said. Dmitri said as much. Bigger. More dangerous. There are always more threats. That's the price of power. Then maybe I don't want power. Margaret laughed. Genuine, surprised laughter. Oh, Lepochka. You've wanted power since you were 16 years old and realized it was the only thing standing between you and death. You've built an empire. Destroyed it. Rebuilt it stronger. You've become what 3 generations of your family tried to become. You don't get to pretend you don't want it now. What if I want something else? Something normal? Then you'll die. Because normal people don't survive in our world. Normal people get used. Get killed. Get forgotten. Margaret's voice softened. But extraordinary people? They change the world. They build dynasties. They become legends. And you, my darling girl, are extraordinary. Elena looked out over Seattle, thinking about the wedding that never happened. The empire that burned and rose again. The family that was dead and alive and complicated beyond measure. What do I do now? She asked. Now. Margaret smiled. Now you do what you've always done. You survive. You lead. You protect your family. And when the next threat comes, her smile turned sharp, you show them exactly why betting against Elena Kim is a fatal mistake. Elena raised her glass. To surviving. To surviving, Margaret echoed. And to becoming the woman your parents could never be, powerful enough to win without losing yourself in the process. They drank. And Elena felt something settle in her chest. Not peace, exactly, but purpose. Clarity. The understanding that she'd been forged in fire and emerged as something new. Something that could be ruthless and compassionate. Powerful and human. The monster and the queen. Because that was the truth Dmitri had never understood. You didn't have to choose between strength and humanity. You just had to be strong enough to carry both. And Elena Kim, the girl who'd survived an uncle's betrayal, a fiancé's deception, an empire's destruction, was strong enough to carry anything. 6 months later, Elena stood in the office of her new company, legitimate, clean, untouchable by any investigation, and looked at the Seattle skyline through floor-to-ceiling windows. Kim Global Logistics occupied the entire 40th floor of the Columbia Center. Everything was state-of-the-art, everything was legal, and everything was hers in ways the old empire never had been. No shell corporations. No hidden accounts. No shadows to hide in. Just business, built on the foundations of everything she'd learned but stripped of everything that had made her vulnerable. Boss. Victor appeared in the doorway, tablet in hand. He wore a suit now instead of tactical gear. Chief Operating Officer of Kim Global Logistics. Legitimate businessman. No one looking at him would suspect he'd led a hostage extraction team 6 months ago. The Singapore deal closed. We are officially the largest independent shipping company on the West Coast. Largest legitimate shipping company, Elena corrected with a small smile. That too. Victor's expression turned serious. Also, we have a visitor. Says you'll want to see him. Who? Ryan Volkov. Your cousin. Elena hadn't seen Ryan since the trial 3 months ago, Dmitri's trial, where Ryan had testified against his father with a quiet courage that had impressed even the prosecutors who'd wanted to charge him as an accomplice. Send him in. Ryan walked into her office looking nothing like the angry young man who'd helped destroy her wedding. He'd cut his hair, traded expensive suits for business casual, and his eyes held something that might have been peace. Elena, he said. Thank you for seeing me. Family doesn't need appointments, Elena replied. How are you? Better. The therapy helps. Understanding that everything I believed about my father was a lie helps more. He sat across from her desk. I'm applying to business schools. Want to build something legitimate. Something that doesn't require lying or manipulating or destroying people's weddings. Ryan flinched, then smiled slightly. Yeah. That. I'm sorry, by the way. I know I said it before, but I need to say it again. What I did was what Dmitri trained you to do. What he manipulated you into doing. I understand that now. You were as much his victim as I was. That doesn't excuse it. No, but it explains it. And explanation is the first step toward forgiveness. Ryan looked at her with surprise. You forgive me? I'm working on it. Some days are easier than others. But Ryan, Elena leaned forward, you shot your own father to save me. You testified against him knowing it would destroy any chance of reconciliation. You chose justice over blood. That counts for something. Dmitri said blood was the only thing that mattered. Dmitri was wrong about a lot of things. Blood matters, but choices matter more. You chose differently than he did. That makes you family in ways he never was. Ryan's eyes filled with tears. I don't know how to be family. I've never had it. Not really. Neither did I, for a long time. But I'm learning. Elena pulled out an envelope. Which is why I have a proposition for you. She slid the envelope across the desk. Ryan opened it, his eyes widening. This is a job offer. Entry-level position in our logistics department. Salary, benefits, legitimate work. If you accept, you'll start at the bottom, work your way up, and prove that you're more than Dmitri's son. That you're your own person. Why would you offer me this? Because you deserve a chance. Because I believe people can change. Because, Elena smiled, you're family. And I protect family. Even when they've hurt me. Ryan stared at the offer letter, his hand shaking. I'll take it, he said quietly. I'll prove I'm worth this trust. I promise. I know you will. After Ryan left, Elena returned to the window, watching the city that had tried to destroy her and failed. Her phone buzzed. Grace's name. *** lunch today. Need to tell you about this insane case I'm working on. Also need best friend advice on whether I should date the new partner at my firm. ***. Elena smiled and texted back, *** lunch at our usual place. 1 p.m. And yes, you should date him. Life's too short for hesitation. ***. Grace's response was immediate. *** says the woman who almost married a con artist. ***. Exactly. I learned from my mistakes. You're welcome. ***. Love you. You terrifying criminal mastermind. ***. Love you too. You brilliant legal genius. ***. Elena pocketed her phone, thinking about Grace, who'd stayed despite everything, who'd chosen friendship over judgment, who'd helped rebuild an empire while keeping Elena human enough to deserve that empire. The door opened again. Margaret entered, elegant as ever in a grey suit, looking every inch the retired businesswoman and nothing like the former Russian operative who'd survived Stalin's purges. How's the empire? Margaret asked. Growing. Clean. Profitable. Everything we wanted. And the other matters. Elena knew what she meant. The threats Dmitry had warned about. The larger players who'd supposedly been watching, waiting, testing her through Dmitry's attack. Quiet. For now. Either Dmitry was exaggerating, or they're still evaluating. Or they're planning something we haven't detected yet. Always a possibility. Elena turned from the window. Grandma, about my parents. Have you decided? 6 months. 6 months of knowing her parents were alive somewhere. 6 months of having an address she could go to. A reunion she could demand. 6 months of choosing not to. I'm not ready, Elena said finally. Maybe I'll never be ready. They made their choice 12 years ago. I've made mine now. If they want back in my life, they can be the ones to reach out. They can be the ones to explain. They can be the ones to ask for forgiveness. And if they do, then I'll decide if forgiveness is something I can give. Elena met her grandmother's eyes. But right now, I have an empire to run. A family to protect. A life to build. I can't do that while chasing ghosts of parents who chose to leave. Margaret studied her for a long moment. You've grown into someone remarkable. Lapochka star. Someone your parents would be proud of. Someone I'm proud of. Even though I'm not the woman you raised me to be. You're exactly the woman I raised you to be. Ruthless when necessary. Compassionate when possible. Strong enough to lead and human enough to care. That's the balance your grandfather never found. That Dmitry never understood. But you, Margaret smiled, you've figured it out. Elena wasn't sure about that. Wasn't sure she'd figured out anything except how to survive one more day, one more crisis, one more impossible choice. But she was alive. Her empire was rebuilt. Her family, the chosen one, not the blood one, was safe. That was enough for now. Her phone rang. Isabella's name. Boss, we have movement on the West Seattle docks. Unregistered container ship. Could be nothing, could be someone testing our new security protocols. Send a team. Standard inspection. I want to know what's in that container and who sent it. On it. Elena hung up and looked at Margaret. Looks like our quiet period is ending. It always does. That's the price of power. Then I guess I better get used to paying it. Margaret left, and Elena returned to her desk, reviewing reports, making decisions, leading an empire that looked nothing like the one she'd inherited but felt exactly right. Her office door opened. Grace appeared with takeout bags and a brilliant smile. I know we said 1 p.m., but I couldn't wait. Also, I brought Thai food because I know you skip lunch when you're working and I'm a good friend who keeps you from starving. Elena laughed, genuine, surprised laughter that felt foreign and wonderful simultaneously. You're the best friend. Obviously. Grace set down the food and studied Elena carefully. You look good. Different. More. Settled. I destroyed an empire, rebuilt it from scratch, discovered my parents are alive, and decided I'm okay with never seeing them. I'd say I'm as settled as I'm going to get. And Cameron? Do you ever think about him? Elena considered the question honestly. Did she think about the man who'd fooled her, used her, almost married her? Sometimes, she admitted. When I'm feeling vulnerable. When I wonder if I'll ever be able to trust someone that way again. But then I remember that what I felt for Cameron wasn't real because Cameron wasn't real. He was a role Dmitry paid him to play. Grieving that feels like grieving a ghost. What about dating? Are you ready to try again? I don't know. Maybe. Someday. Elena smiled. For now, I'm focused on building something that can't be taken from me. Something that's mine in ways the old empire never was. The empire you built on the ashes of the empire you destroyed. Exactly. Grace opened the takeout containers, and they ate lunch in Elena's office overlooking Seattle, talking about cases and business deals, and the new partner Grace was definitely going to date despite her protests. Normal. Easy. The friendship that had survived everything. After Grace left, Elena worked through the afternoon. Meetings, decisions, the daily operations of an empire that ran on legitimacy instead of shadows. At 6 p.m., her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Elena almost ignored it. Unknown numbers were rarely good news, but something made her answer. Hello. Elena Kim. The voice was unfamiliar. Male. Accented. Dangerous. My name is Alexander Morozov. I represent certain interests in Eastern Europe. Interests that are very interested in your recent reorganization. Elena's blood ran cold. This was it. The threat Dmitry had warned about. The real players making their move. I'm listening, Elena said calmly, even as she activated the recording function Victor had built into her phone. Your uncle was useful to us. Provided services. Facilitated operations. Now he's in prison, his network is dissolved, and we find ourselves without a West Coast partner. Pause. We'd like to discuss a business arrangement. I run a legitimate shipping company. I don't do the kind of business Dmitry did. Everyone does the kind of business we are interested in. They just don't always know it yet. Morozov's voice held a smile. But we can discuss details in person. Tomorrow, noon. The address will be texted to you. And if I decline, then we find another partner. Someone less capable. Someone who will require more aggressive management. Someone whose operations might interfere with yours in unfortunate ways. A threat, wrapped in politeness but unmistakable. I'll consider it, Elena said. Excellent. We look forward to meeting the woman who defeated Dmitry Volkov. You've impressed many people, Ms. Kim. Let's see if you can continue to impress. He hung up. Elena stared at her phone, feeling the weight of new threats, new complications, new wars that would need fighting. Then she smiled. Because this was what she'd been trained for. What she'd been forged to do. What she'd survived Dmitry to become. A leader strong enough to face whatever came next. She called Victor. We have a situation. Alexander Morozov, Eastern European interests, wants a meeting tomorrow. Do we accept? We accept. But we go prepared. Full security. Backup plans. I want to know everything about Morozov and his organization before I walk into that meeting. On it, boss. Elena hung up and looked out over Seattle one more time. 6 months ago, she'd been standing at an altar in a wedding dress, about to marry a con artist, about to be humiliated in front of everyone who mattered. Now she stood in her empire, rebuilt and stronger, facing new threats with clear eyes and hard-won wisdom. The journey from there to here had cost her everything. Her empire, her innocence, her belief that love was possible in her world. But it had also given her everything: strength, clarity, the understanding that she could be ruthless and human simultaneously, that she could win without losing herself, that she could be the monster and the queen. Her phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. I've been watching you, Elena. Watching you build something remarkable from the ashes. Watching you become everything I hoped you'd be. I'm proud of you, sweetheart. More proud than words can express. When you're ready, if you're ever ready, I'll be here. Waiting. Mom ***. Elena stared at the message for a long time. Then she typed a response. I'm not ready yet. Maybe someday. But thank you for staying away. For letting me become this without your interference. For trusting that I could survive without you. I don't know if I'll ever forgive you for leaving. But I understand why you did. That's something. She hit send before she could second-guess herself. The response came immediately. That's all I can ask for. Be safe, my darling. Be strong. Be happy. We love you. Always. Elena set down her phone and felt something release in her chest. Not forgiveness, exactly, but acceptance. Her parents had made their choice. She'd made hers. Maybe someday those choices would lead to reunion. Maybe not. Either way, she'd survive. She always did. Margaret appeared in the doorway one final time that evening. Your mother texted you, she said. It wasn't a question. Margaret always knew. She did. I responded. And I told her the truth. That I'm not ready. That maybe I'll never be ready. But that I understand why she left. Do you? Elena thought about it carefully. I understand survival. I understand doing terrible things to protect the people you love. I understand making impossible choices. If that's not forgiveness, it's at least comprehension. Margaret nodded approvingly. That's all any of us can hope for. Comprehension. The understanding that everyone's surviving the best way they know how. Even Dmitry. Even Dmitry. He's a monster, yes. But he's also a product of the same system that made your grandfather. That made me. That made you. We are all surviving. We are all making choices that seem impossible from the outside. The only difference is that you're trying to do it without losing your humanity. Am I succeeding? Margaret smiled. You saved Cameron and his sister. You gave Daniel and his daughter protection. You offered Ryan a chance at a normal life. You forgave Grace for doubting you. You're building an empire that doesn't require shadows. She moved closer, taking Elena's hands. Yes, Lepochka. You're succeeding. Not perfectly. Not without cost. But you're succeeding. Elena squeezed her grandmother's hands, feeling the weight of 3 generations of women who'd survived impossible odds. What would you have done? Elena asked. If you were 16 again, inheriting an empire, facing what I faced. Exactly what you did. But with more bodies. More ruthlessness. Less mercy. Margaret's expression softened. You're better than I was. Better than your grandfather. Better than Dmitry. You've figured out how to be powerful without becoming the monster. That's the real victory. They stood together in the office overlooking Seattle. 3 generations of survival and strength and the slow, painful journey towards something that looked like redemption. What happens now? Elena asked. Now you meet with Morozov. You navigate the next threat. You keep building your empire and protecting your family. You survive. Margaret released her hands. That's all any of us ever do. Survive until we can do more than survive. Until we can actually live. And when do I get to actually live? When you stop asking that question and start noticing that you already are. Margaret left, and Elena realized she was right. She was already living. Not the life she'd imagined at 16, standing over her parents' graves. Not the life she dreamed of 6 months ago, wearing a wedding dress and believing in fairy tales. But a life that was hers, built on choices she'd made, sacrifices she'd accepted, strength she'd earned. A life that included Grace's friendship and Ryan's redemption and Victor's loyalty and Margaret's love. A life that was messy and complicated and dangerous but fundamentally, powerfully hers. Her phone buzzed one last time. Grace again. Stop working and come to dinner at my place. I'm cooking. Well, ordering delivery and pretending I cooked. But you're coming. 7 p.m. No excuses. Bring that smile I love. The real one, not the Queen of Shadows one. Your best friend who loves you despite your terrible life choices. Elena smiled, the real smile, the one that felt like coming home, and texted back, I'll be there. And Grace. Thank you. For everything. For staying. For believing. For reminding me I'm human when being a monster would be easier. Your best friend who makes terrible life choices but great friendships. She gathered her things, locked her office, and headed toward the elevator. Toward dinner with her best friend. Toward the life she'd built from the ashes of everything she'd lost. Toward whatever came next, knowing she was strong enough to face it. Because Elena Kim, the girl who'd almost married a con artist, who destroyed an empire to save it, who discovered her parents were alive and chosen to let them stay dead, had learned the most important lesson of all. You don't survive by becoming the monster. You don't win by losing your humanity. You don't build empires by sacrificing everything that makes you worth following. You survive by being ruthless when necessary and compassionate when possible. You win by making impossible choices and learning to live with them. You build empires by being strong enough to carry both power and humanity, both the crown and the heart, both the weapon and the woman. And as Elena walked out of her office building into the Seattle evening, toward dinner with her best friend, toward whatever threats tomorrow would bring, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Not the naive hope of the girl who'd believed in fairy tale weddings, but the hard-won hope of the woman who'd survived everything and come out stronger. The hope that said, I've faced the worst. I've lost everything. I've been broken and rebuilt. And I'm still here. Still fighting. Still human. Still me. That hope was enough. It had to be. Because the Queen of Shadows was also just Elena, a woman who'd survived betrayal and heartbreak and war to build something that actually mattered. A friendship that survived everything. A family that chose loyalty over blood. An empire that didn't require losing herself to maintain. A life that was messy and complicated and dangerous and absolutely, perfectly hers. And as she climbed into her car and drove toward Grace's apartment, toward laughter and terrible delivery food and the kind of normal she'd once thought impossible, Elena Kim smiled. The real smile. The one that said she'd won. Not against Dmitri or Cameron or her parents or anyone else, but against the voice in her head that said she couldn't have both. Couldn't be powerful and human. Couldn't rule an empire and keep her soul. Couldn't be the monster and the queen and just Elena simultaneously. That voice was wrong. And Elena had the rest of her life to prove it.